How did you survive a home invasion situation? I was in 7th grade, home alone after a half day, when suddenly there was a very hard knocking on my back door. I knew immediately something was off because we never have visitors, and my father didn't knock like that, and froze up in my room. I peeked out of my room, right in front of my front door, and suddenly it's quiet, so I go back to my room. As soon as I close my door, I hear glass shatter. Turned off my computer and TV and dove under the bed. For the next 40 minutes, I heard him thrashing around my living room and parents' room, then heard him leave. During this, I was on call with the cops, who think I'm prank calling them, and they take 70 minutes to finally come over. The station is 3 streets away from my house. They come and investigate, only to find out it was our next-door neighbor that broke in and was actually looking for substance money, as it turns out that the previous person to live here did at-home haircuts and sold green herb on the side. The neighbor was arrested and his family moved out a week later. The only thing this guy took was my lunch money that I left on the counter outside for the next day. Guy came knocking on the front door and my mum and I ignored it. I was about 10 and my mum didn't want to answer the door to a stranger. He knocked a while and then went around the back and hopped the gate to try the back door. My mum got her 9mm out and opened the back door with it visible right before he tried to smash the glass. He took off running and was arrested on breaking and entering charges the next day after he broke into somebody else's apartment and couldn't run. My in-laws were home when a young guy broke into their house. They don't speak English very well, so my father-in-law, in the clearest English he could muster, loudly said, "Get me my rifle." At that point, the intruder left in a hurry. My wife sucks at thinking on her feet. I honestly think she'd say back, "But we don't have one of those." Tackled the guy. The hardest I've ever hit someone, and I'm a pretty big guy with a football background. He didn't see me coming. It felt very much like a do-or-die moment, so I didn't hold anything back. Broke a few of his bones, messed up his face, and got him sentenced to 6 years. 4 guys knocked on my buddy's door at 11 p.m. He lived with a bunch of guys, so this wasn't anything new. They bust in and held a gat to his neck and demanded the yay. He stammered that there weren't actually any substances, but they could take what they wanted. One guy held him there with the weapon as the others searched the house. Since they didn't find anything, they realized they had the wrong place and left. As they were leaving, the last guy said, "Sorry, this wasn't my idea." Yo, man, I'm imagining, "Oh, yeah, sorry broski, wrong house." Haha, that's wonderfully awkward. I mean, it's great that they weren't hardened enough to just kill you for witnessing them, because I could imagine that you could probably still have called the cops on them and been able to spot their license plate or direction. No more from the author on whether such an action was taken. I was at my friend's place when it happened to him. We were both teenagers then. The guy thought everyone was sleeping and he got startled when he saw us. He bit my friend, his arm required stitches from the bite, and then just ran away. No idea who the guy was or what he wanted, never happened again, and we never saw him again. When I was 11, my closest friend had a home invasion involving a local gang. Her father fought back, they shanked him 14 times and shot him twice. They then held the wife and 2 of the children hostage. The third, a little girl, slept through it all, tied them up and stole all the electronics and their car. After the robbers left, they went looking for Dad, and the youngest found him dead in the swimming pool. The entire suburb was devastated. He was the loveliest guy, had a black belt in karate, and did his best to fend off at least 4 intruders. After his death, they sold the house and moved across the country. Can't really blame them. Not me, but my aunt. She was at home alone in her backyard making food, and then she walked into the living room. She saw a couple of men in the middle of it carrying out the TV. It seems that they didn't think anyone was at home. They got surprised, dropped the TV, and ran out after she started screaming. The TV surprisingly made it. Not sure of the full details on that, but my aunt still has the same TV. I was in bed, asleep at 7 a.m. when I heard a loud bang. I thought nothing of it because of the large cat tree I have downstairs that's always getting knocked over, so I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. Not long after, my elderly cat comes running into my room, jumps on the bed, and tries to hide under the blankets. This immediately woke me up because that old fat cat hadn't run nor jumped on our bed for years. As I came to, I saw 2 men coming up my stairs. At that point, it felt like time stopped and somehow I ran incredibly fast at the same time. I jumped out of the bed and started screaming, "Get the F out of my house!" And I remembered thinking, while chasing these guys through my house and screaming again and again at the top of my lungs, that my voice sounds exactly like my brother, and I wondered how strange that was. I tackled one of them on my front lawn, but he struggled free and got away. I saw the getaway car and tried to keep repeating the license number, but it faded away in my mind as I was repeating it. I remember vividly being so mad at myself that I couldn't remember 7 numbers, and how stupid I was for not grabbing my phone. Looking back on the situation, there are so many things that happened that I never noticed, like how I fractured my arm slamming into the wall at the bottom of my stairs, or that I cut my feet up on the splintered wood of my front door. The adrenaline rush of a true fight-or-flight situation is something so strange it's almost impossible to accurately describe. The sense of time, not being aware of the pain and injuries for hours, and the hyper-focus on some details but the complete lack of others. Luckily, I wasn't seriously hurt and nothing was stolen, but I installed cameras all over my house the very next day. Girlfriend and I were sleeping in bed. Some dummy broke into our apartment, ran real quick when he saw my big, undressed, majestic gut. About 10 years ago, some guy broke down my mum's front door at 2 a.m. The noise of it woke her up and she came out of the bedroom and saw the guy messing with the papers on her desk, thinking there was money there maybe. My mum's little dog was barking for all he was worth, and my mum was yelling my name. The yelling and barking woke me upstairs in the guest room, so I came running down the stairs making a lot of noise. The guy ran off because of my mum or the barking dog or me coming down the stairs, who knows. And I ran out onto the street after him, but he was gone. I called the cops. They showed up in less than 5 minutes. The officer was very nice. The next day, my mum got a new door with a longer deadbolt. It's a very quiet neighborhood. We haven't heard of such a thing happening to anybody else. Not sure if the guy was crazy, at the wrong house, thought nobody was home, or something else. Freaked the fudge out. I let them take whatever they wanted and held my cat. It was friends of my sister. She'd screwed them on some substance deal, and I guess I was convenient. They took almost all of my electronics and raided the fridge. Locked the doors when it became clear that somebody was trying to break in. My husband and I were staying with a friend and her husband. Her stepson and elderly mother-in-law were also in the house. Somebody had heard the old lady had jewelry and decided to try their luck. We heard this later through the town grapevine. Said person then escalated to trying to kick his way in through the windows. They were leaded. My husband called the police while my friend and I tried to keep the old lady and child calm, and her husband and I screamed a lot and sort of flailed at the protruding feet with pokers from the old fireplace. On realizing there were more of us than there were of him, he ran off. Good thing too, the police never showed up. They called 5 days later to see, quote, if we still needed assistance. Bloody useless. In comparison, 6 months later, I arrived at work to discover the door and cash drawer had been jimmied and the £50 float nicked, and they were over and taking fingerprints inside the hour. I wonder why trust in the police is so low. It's a total mystery. And my wife was in the building for one. She came home from her morning shift to find 2 guys standing in our apartment, wrapping up their heist. She freaked out, they freaked out, then they ran, and she ran after for a while and called the cops. That was that. The amount of people who decide to pursue criminals on foot here is telling me that some people's flight or fight impulses resolve very differently to mine. I think if I walked in on this, I would faint and soil myself. So yes, 2 very viable, admirable, and equally effective solutions to the problem, right? My boyfriend Jay and I were staying with 2 friends of his, Jim and Jeremy. Jeremy had left the apartment an hour or so before Jay and I decided to go to bed. A few minutes after Jay fell asleep, I heard a knock on the door and Jim answered it. Turns out it was Jeremy, but he wasn't alone. 2 guys that also lived in the apartment building forced Jeremy to knock at the door so that they could force their way in, as he didn't have his keys with him. Once they were inside, I could hear what sounded like a scuffle from where I was in the bedroom, with the door closed. I woke Jay up and all of a sudden we heard 2 unknown voices yelling, "Get down! Get the F on the ground!" Jay wanted to go see what was going on, but I begged him to stay in the bedroom with me, which he did. After what seemed like a couple of minutes of arguing and fighting sounds, everything went absolutely silent. We opened the bedroom door to see Jim laying on the ground with what we later found out to be a barbed machete sticking out of his chest. Jeremy was calling 911. The apartment building didn't have a buzzer to let anyone into the building, so when the police got there, Jay let them in and showed them to the suite we were in. After a while, they separated us all and put the 3 of us into the back of 3 different police cars, where they left us while the paramedics tried to save Jim. Unfortunately, they weren't able to save him. He died at the apartment. I knew he was dead when the paramedics wheeled him out to the ambulance, but didn't leave for at least 5 minutes without working on him at all. The police took us to be questioned, again keeping us separated the entire time. About 12 hours later, they were ready to let us go, but told us we weren't allowed to go back to the apartment, as it was an active crime scene. We were dropped off by the police at a coffee shop with no money, phones, wallets, or even shoes on our feet, as they wouldn't let us take anything from the apartment before they put us in the police cars before being questioned. We ended up going to a friend's house where we stayed until we were let back into the apartment 4 or 5 days later. Once we were finally allowed back into the apartment, the first thing I had to do was clean up the blood, which I'm sure you can imagine was pretty hard to handle. It was pretty traumatic. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was in college and had the only room on the ground floor. I was bartending, so I got home at like 3:30 a.m. I'd just changed and gotten into bed when I heard someone fiddling with my window screen. I lived in a beach town, and I usually left my windows cracked open to hear the ocean as I fell asleep. I first thought it was one of my roommates who forgot their keys or something, but realized they would have called me first. So I flattened myself against the foot of my bed and the wall to look. It was a guy in a black hoodie with a box cutter cutting my window screen. As he was lifting himself to enter, I jumped onto my bed and kicked him as hard as I could on the chest. He fell into the parking lot, hit a bike rack, and was knocked unconscious. I slammed my window shut, bolted it, and called the cops. By the time they showed up, he was gone, but they found him 2 blocks away. His bag had zip ties and duct tape in it, and he had a record of the unspeakable act. The cops blamed me a bit for having my window open. I kept my window shut after that. My aunt and cousin had a legit home invasion happen many years ago. Gang members came to the door and barged in, whipped my cousin, and tore the house up. The intruders didn't speak English and apparently had the wrong house. After realizing it was the wrong house, they left. This was in Tucson, Arizona, probably about 20 years ago. Guy who stalked me broke into my house with his buddy. I had a messed up sleep schedule, so I was awake at 3 or so a.m. I grabbed my little dog and my phone and went to the basement. It was a little cellar, almost. A trapdoor in the floor with stairs that led down to a small space with the furnace, hot water tank, some of the other utilities. I got my dog and I into the crawl space. I'd had some cardboard on top of the door, so they didn't see it when it was closed. I turned my phone on silent and texted my best friend, asking her to call the cops for me. After the longest 15 minutes of my life, the cops eventually got there, arrested the felon and his buddy, and came to find me. These 2 monsters had what the police described to me as an R-word and disposal kit. Duct tape, lubricant, adult toys, a handsaw, and a box of heavy-duty big black garbage bags, which implied intent and planning. So they went away for conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit the unspeakable act, breaking and entering, and something else I can't remember. The guy who actually stalked me pinned it all on his buddy. So Buddy went away for 5 years and is still in prison because he can't not act like a psycho. While the stalker served 2.75 years of his 4-year sentence, he threw his buddy under the bus and took a plea deal for himself. Later got out on good behavior. Got a restraining order, which he violated a couple of times right away. It had been quiet for a bit until he got a girlfriend a couple of years ago. He told her his version in which he was the victim and I was the villain who sent him to jail for nothing. So she sent me a long, nasty message telling me she'd find me and make me pay for it. So predictably, the cops go to talk to both of them, and I haven't heard from them since. It was nice of them to give you a message trail showing their intent for revenge and violent action. Hopefully that got them put away and out of your hair for the foreseeable future. Make sure you block them on everything and maybe keep the social media presence low. Not me, but my friend woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. As he was finishing up, the Ring camera motion detector picked up someone at his door at 3 a.m. My friend ran to the front door just as the intruder started trying to force it open. He watched on the Ring camera and was verging on panic, so he shouted at the intruder through the door. He wanted to sound tough and intimidating, but his courage failed him at the last minute and he said, "Get out of here, or I'm gonna F you." He meant to say up at the end, but that's when his nerve failed him. So instead of saying he was going to administer a beatdown, he just declared his intent to copulate. Through the Ring camera, he watched the intruder freeze up, look scared, and slowly back away from the door and to make a run for it. So I guess things worked out okay in the end. Postscript, yes, my friend handed the Ring footage to the cops. The cops arrested the guy a day or 2 later for something else. My door was kicked in at just after 2 a.m. I walked out into the living room holding my weapon. I said, "I'm armed," loudly, and at that point I heard someone chamber around. So I just started shooting. I hit him twice and he died. I have no regrets. Police told me he had just gotten out of prison a few days before for a similar crime. It was about 4 years ago. For some reason, for the few hours leading up to the event, I was feeling uneasy and on edge. This was 3 hours prior, and I even consciously thought that it was weird because I had a buddy over and I was playing my favorite video game. But I just couldn't enjoy myself. Unusually, my father was also up very late watching the TV in the lounge, and he too later commented that he felt like he was being watched. Approximately an hour after he turned into bed, everything happened all at once. We believe at least 3 men tried to quietly pull a window out of our double doors. They were the French door types, to get in. But they dropped the pane, and when it shattered, everyone was alerted. Shouting, barking, and screaming commenced, and then they tried to break down the door to get in and to grab anything convenient. Unfortunately for them, we had a large bird cage blocking the door on the inside and they couldn't get in. They decided to make their getaway, and while doing so, one of them threw a brick at the window my father was looking through and broke that pane as well. While this was all going down, my buddy and I stayed in my room, door shut and locked. I grabbed a nearby skateboard, the only thing I had that could be weaponized. It felt like everything was happening very slowly, especially because I could hear but not see what was going on. For reference, we have a freestanding house that, at the time, had an empty plot next door. We think they jumped over a concrete wall as there's palisade fencing in front of the house. A guy kicked the door in to beat up my roommate who had just got home from a late night of gambling. I was in the back and heard the commotion. I called a 911 and they didn't take me seriously. "Can you just leave?" Until I said it sounded like someone was going to get murdered. The cops came, I was told to leave the house by the cops. I walked in front of the house to greet some Glocks to my cell phone. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, the walls, and the rest. The fight had broken windows and spread into the hallway and kitchen. I backed out of the house and was dragged across the yard by the cops. I told them I didn't see anyone in the house. They entered and there was commotion when they found my roommate hiding next to his bed. The police were upset I didn't see him. He was dragged out on a stretcher and the neighbors watching probably figured I beat the crap out of him. I was fixing the windows when he walked home from the hospital, still wearing a gown and hospital slippers. He didn't want to pay to be admitted. He looked like he'd escaped an asylum. We never spoke about it after he repaired the damage. My tip: just say murder when you call 911. A lot of police will come very quickly. An ex and I were coming home from a night out and the front door of her condo was open. She started the "you didn't close the door" thing, so we walked up and I turned on the light, and there was an old man there with her jewelry box in his hand. She knew who it was her downstairs neighbor. So I stood in the doorway and called 911 and kept him there until they showed up. When the cops showed up, I looked down, it was a second-floor entry, and I saw an old lady hiding behind the dumpsters. I said, "He's not going anywhere, but the lady behind the dumpster might," and the cops got her and our DVD player. I ID'd it by saying Talladega Nights should be in there, and it was. They were both whacked out of their minds. The lady swore she found the DVD player in the parking lot, and the guy's excuse for breaking into the house was that he was outside and saw elves climbing up into her balcony and going in the house, and he was going to get the valuables out so they couldn't get to them. Well, this is at least more standoffish and weird than outright horrifying like some of them. I don't know whether we put the fact that the guy didn't just try to shoulder barge past you down to him being really out of it or just being a gentle soul. Slept through it. It was the last night we spent in the house before moving into another in the same city. The moving company finished that day. 5 guys tied up my dad and threatened to do awful things to my mum and I. We both slept through the whole thing. They held him at weapon point. 3 hours later, we had no TV, phones, some wine, and clothes were stolen. We really just kept what was important to us that night. When they left, my dad got his restraints off and woke us up. Luckily, they didn't take the cars, so we drove in our neighborhood until we found someone to call help. Some guy was sneaking his girlfriend back into her parents' house and begged us not to make a huge noise, but we were a few houses down, so no worries. It's like 2 completely different movies being filmed at the same time. I was in bed upstairs, home from work because I was sick. Someone knocked on my front door. I didn't answer because I felt like absolute garbage. A little while later, I heard a strange thud in my kitchen. My cats, who were laying with me, became alert, which made me nervous, so I went downstairs to investigate. As I was coming down the stairs, I saw a young man in my kitchen and another outside the kitchen window. I yelled, "What the truck?" in a deeper tone than I normally have. I think that was some kind of instinct. They got scared and ran for the back door, which was locked. I actually had to explain to the inside guy that you have to do the top lock first. He shoved a chair at me, unlocked the door, and ran off with his friends. I wasn't scared in the moment, only afterward. In fact, I kind of felt bad for the guy while it was happening. He looked like he was maybe 15 and scared shirtless that someone was home. I was sleeping after a night shift. I woke up and went to the kitchen to see 2 guys working on my sliding glass door with a screwdriver. I was still half asleep, and it took a few seconds to register. I got my .22 rifle, which was my only weapon at the time, and opened up the side door. Their getaway driver was parked across the street and started honking. They bolted. I walked out in my underwear with my weapon to watch them peel out, but I'm sure they would have gotten in if they'd had another 10 minutes. What was the biggest disaster of a CV you've ever seen? Unfortunately, the worst I've ever seen was submitted by my friend who I vouched for before he submitted his resume. Now, we were all in the same college classes and mostly all of the same project groups, so his resume should and could have contained all the same stuff my first resume did, plus what he did in the 2 years out of college. I didn't have a whole lot of impressive stuff being just out of college when I applied, but it was well formatted and thought out. My friend submitted a pile of jumbled crap. There were at least 4 different fonts, random missing bullets, no sort of organization, missing important dates and keywords. We did the hiring as a team, but my boss handed me his resume and asked, "Is this your friend? Is this what he's capable of?" To be honest, I was shocked because my friend did well in school and was pretty intelligent. All I could say was, he's better in person and can figure stuff out even if he's never learned it before. I got him the interview and my boss wouldn't put him past the first interview. He said it was a horrible interview and my friend showed no interest and couldn't elaborate on any of the bullet points on his resume whatsoever. It was absolutely shocking and embarrassing for me. I received a resume by email from John. The email address had the name as George listed. The resume was for Max. So 3 different names for one application. As if that wasn't bad enough, it was more of a story of his life in paragraph format than citing his skills. That sounds like it was literally 3 kids in a trench coat. Was worked as the boss of the business factory in the job history? I had a guy apply to an online job posting, but all he sent was a picture of his dog and somehow no contact information. This I do get. I've burned at least one e-bridge by attaching the wrong file. Was supposed to send a resume, and instead sent an unfinished board game design. Worse was that I spent the time to write a really good, well-researched cover letter, and then boom, here's how you play The Sims with cardboard. I just didn't follow up out of shame. The narrator was very curious about this author's board game, and went down a weird rabbit hole of trying to find a comment where they explained it. And I've got to be frank here, their concept was really cool and novel, even if they eventually gave up. So maybe time to revisit your idea, commenter. I thought it sounded like a neat party game. The hiring manager loves making board games in his free time. Everyone else at work and home thinks it's silly. Finally, he receives your board game design and thinks, "Finally, the piece that completes my puzzle of loneliness. I don't care what your resume looks like. You're hired, new best friend." And then you never followed up. I do staffing, and you wouldn't believe the resumes I've seen. One time I was trying to fill a 3rd shift warehouse role for minimum wage, and it was a super urgent need for our client in a remote area. The only guy with experience I could get to bite was very interesting. All his resume said was, "I've done warehouse stuff for a long time. I have 'frick you' tatted on my forehead. Please let me get in front of you though. I'm the definition of don't judge a book by the cover." I screened the guy, Skyped with him, and had him come in to meet with me. He was great. I let the client know what to expect before sending him on to the interview. They hired him on the spot. Font size 30 point. Comic Sans, and just described her appearance as, "I'm looking for a job." One of my worst was the opposite. 10-point font, 3 pages, front and back, describing minute technical details of like every job they'd held in the past 20 years. Dude, you may be qualified, but I'll never know because no one's got time to read your novella in the middle of the workday. I had a guy who sent in a resume where he'd accidentally pasted an internet banner ad for adult website to the top of it. Who knows how many of those he sent out? A guy applying for a position in agricultural research just sent a photo of a plant in his backyard. "You, sir, do not look like the photo you've submitted. This interview is over." We were hiring for a position in IT recently. One applicant was this lady, about 60, used to work in IT in the 90s and then quit to watch her daughter's children. Most recent job was cashiering in a supermarket. From her CV I learned, when she was 17 she visited the US for a couple of weeks on a student exchange program, where she met David and they fell in love. Afterwards they kept in contact until he eventually came to our country and they got married. They had an exciting life, being roadies for rock bands and such. Somewhere along the line they managed to finish uni and had 2 daughters. David was the love of her life. Then something happened. Unfortunately, she didn't elaborate, and David isn't in her life anymore. I never found out whether he died or they got divorced or something. She devoted all of her energy to her daughters and their offspring, since that was all she had left of David. Now, after the grandchildren are old enough, she wants to work in IT again. David's name appeared in the application, on the CV and cover letter, a whopping 17 times. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him. I work for one of the largest staffing firms in the United States, so I've probably seen well over 1,000 CVs in my tenure here. I wouldn't say this was a bad CV, more that it was just the funniest one I've ever seen. We receive a lot of applications through typical job boards, such as Indeed or Career Builder, and when they apply, we get sent an email that has their CV attached to it with the job they applied for. We received numerous applications from one person, and when we opened the CV attachment expecting to see their experience, it was actually a one-page description of how this particular man cheated on his girlfriend multiple times, and this is how she was getting back at him, by screwing him out of the positions he was trying to apply for by replacing his CV with this document. Easily one of the funniest things I've read in my 2 years at this company. We laughed about it for hours. Our office had a submission for a legal assistant, and under skills was, always sleeps with one eye open. I think it was submitted as a joke, I hope it was, but it had an official header info, like the name and contact stuff, but it was blank underneath and said in hand-drawn scrawl, "Me need worky." What bothered me most is that I would have spelled worky differently, i.e. instead of a Y. I'm not sure if it's the worst, but it was the most entertainingly bad. You know in Legally Blonde where Reese Witherspoon gives out her resume and it's on pink scented paper? I got one like that about 9 years ago, which, looking it up on Google just to confirm, made this reference 15 years out of date. Though if it was scented, I did miss that. The resume started off, literally her first paragraph, talking about how Legally Blonde was her favorite movie. It was full of doodles in the margins and specifically requested I do not contact her previous employer because she felt she was fired unfairly and instead listed several sorority sisters as references. She compared herself to Elle Woods several times, explicitly saying that any hiring manager who wouldn't hire her off the resume was doing so because they couldn't handle her individuality. I'm honestly not entirely sure if this was a legit resume or some kind of joke. It had almost nothing to do with the job listing. My manager joked that BuzzFeed was going to write about me if I didn't call. The job went unfilled. We chose literally no one over this. It wasn't really bad, but he did have a section that stood out. Health. In good health. I was hiring EMTs for a health screening, so I can kind of understand it, but just weird. I received one which just said, "I have no skills because I've never worked, but I have my GED, nothing else." On a different resume I received, the candidate listed his height. He was 5'5". I don't know why he thought that would be relevant. I know, right? It's not even like he's impressively short or anything. At least if you're under 5 feet, you can change the wording of that to some CV bullcrap like, well-suited to seeing things from a different perspective, or proficient in low-level tasks relating to short supply inventory. I'm sorry, I'll stop now. I'm not even making this up. I was doing the hiring for a company, and a guy put on a line of his qualities that he was smarter than the average bear. For those of you who don't know, this was a favorite line from the main character in the cartoon Yogi Bear. I mean, you did hire him, right? Were they applying to be a park ranger? It was the worst I've ever seen, but also my favorite. My company does business with a certain family-friendly theme park. This means our employees can't have visible tattoos or crazy hair colors, and they need to be able to pass a substance test, a background check, among other things. I received a resume for a sales position from a guy that we'll just call Andrew. I've just pulled it up so I can quote it word for word. The cover letter says, "Hey, what's good? I've worked at almost every fast food place around, but now it's time to try something new. I don't know how to do retail, but I'll learn. I don't have any official sales experience of the legal kind, you know what I mean, but that was a few weeks ago and I'm not like that no more." On his resume, he listed the places he'd worked at and had descriptions such as, "I take people's orders and clean up their messes," and "take people's orders money and give them their crap." I thought the resume was submitted as a joke until I looked Andrew up on Facebook, he had an uncommon last name, and I found his profile. It was mostly a bunch of bullet points about why he didn't like cheese. His last interview was at a cheese factory. I suspect he was fired from there and didn't want to say why, so he kind of overplayed the not liking cheese thing as the reason for leaving. It was still a very weird thing to be on a CV, though. I got one with a first name only, no address, no email, and no phone number. Even if I wanted to hire him, there was no way to get a hold of him. I just had a pretty entertaining one. Picture of the person applying, what I think was supposed to be the local time, and plenty of bullet points. Each bullet was highlighted in blue or green, then at the end of many of them it just said, neglected. All of these skills are neglected? What the frick? It had a horrible font, was brightly colored, and had a cutesy paw print on the front. You missed out on hiring a golden retriever, classic rookie mistake. Just yesterday, I was interviewing a girl that had SQL curiosity in her CV. So it's the middle of the interview and I randomly ask her if she's confident with SQL, to which she responds, "Well, I personally don't know how it works, but my boyfriend is a programmer and is very good at it." No, we didn't hire her boyfriend. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mother-in-law got one for her accounting office that was a bog-standard CV for a low-ranking accounting position, and attached to it was a huge glossy photo of the applicant on the beach, sprawled on the sand at sunset, with a focus on her ample assets. My old boss kept a file of CVs he thought were terrible and pulled them out here and there for a laugh. This is an English second language school, so there were a few from non-native English speakers with really obvious spelling mistakes that should have been caught by any spell check program. Then there was the guy who attached like 10 passport photos of himself to the file. Like, why? 1, maybe, but 10? Why so many? You could just feel the ego dripping out of every sentence in the whole thing as well. I helped my old boss scan through CVs a while back. A student applying for a job as a barista, their opening line, "I don't believe coffee is a drink. I believe it's an experience, and you need me to be the face of that journey." They had a little waffle about how coffee changed their lives and molded him as a person, how coffee had been his savior in university. The kid seemed to be really into coffee, it was well written, but we were a coffee shop in a shopping center. We didn't need his prose. He was an English student and the CV read as if it was a piece of coursework. The whole thing was in Comic Sans, and the only experience he had down was coffee drinker for 19 years. The kid was 19. He didn't get the job, but I'm sure he graduated well with how well the opening letter was written. I needed someone to work at a gas station. Guy applied and his resume said he was the assistant manager everywhere he'd worked previously. Except he abbreviated both words without punctuation. That's right, he was a 5-time ass man looking to pump your tank. I worked in a cafe, and the guy whose job was to wash dishes showed me his CV for an upcoming job interview. It specified that he can cut mahon cheese very good thin slice. The job was for security. I got a resume from an actual working girl once. She included it on her resume along with the name of the company and website you could go to book her services. Listed under her job description was, "Assessing and meeting clients' needs and desires." I mean, I'm willing to bet that this is far from the worst pick you could have gone with. She even did a good job of the bullcrap rewriting of her skills that so many of us struggle to do. I'm going to say that your average escort is also far more personable and easy to talk to than a lot of the weirdos in your average office. Not that I have any experience in the matter. Not unusual or sadly unique, but when I was working at a pub, I was good mates with the manager, and would often have a scan through of CVs that had been dropped in by the young people looking for a job after they left school. Most of these kids were like 16 or 17 at most, but had CVs that ran 3 to 4 pages. Even someone in their 40s going for a high-flying management job at a world-leading financial company on a few £1,000,000 a year should only have 1 or 2 pages max. These kids had done nothing aside from GCSE and maybe a paper round bit, a bit of volunteering at the most. And that's perfectly fine and reasonable when you're 16 and straight out of school. What in the heck did they get taught in school? To fill out as much crap as possible to make it look good? Why aren't schools teaching them that writing about how much they enjoy going to the cinema or gardening with their dad — that was a genuine inclusion by the way — isn't the kind of thing that's going to get them a job? It was waiting on work at a country pub. Putting nothing except, "I have all my limbs and the normal number of chromosomes," would have overqualified them. Not an employer, but I looked over CVs to create a shortlist for a job. The worst was one that was half complete. It got halfway through and then had a line that said, "To be completed later," followed by a blank page. The other one, not a CV, but a cover letter about why they wanted the job, said what they could do, but it completely missed the point of the job and job description. We were defending claims, and this letter went on about helping claimants, doing the claimants justice. Both got rejected as the job involved attention to detail and research. Neither had proven that they could do this. Several years ago, I had the misfortune of interviewing a fellow for a role in a film shoot. Although the production technically had a human resources professional in charge of screening resumes, they were far better versed in the recruiting process than they were in what qualifications were necessary for the job. As a result, less than half an hour before I was supposed to meet with the man in question, I was handed a document that would have made the most pathological liars blush. According to the resume, my interviewee had been an uncredited consultant on over 100 feature films. While there certainly are cases in which a given worker goes uncredited, it has even happened to me, the sheer magnitude of the fellow's claims went well beyond the realm of believability. Furthermore, the guy had listed quite a few alleged skills that seemed to suggest a less than complete knowledge of the industry. My favorite claim was that he had expert-level apple box skills. For the record, an apple box is literally a wooden box. That's it. There's a few different sizes, and they're used whenever something like a plant or a small piece of furniture or Tom Cruise needs to be stacked on top of a box. I went ahead with the interview anyway, if only because I was curious about how the guy would back up his various claims. He turned out to be maybe 20 years old, which was far too young to have worked on that many of the films, and when pressed, he explained that he had consulted on each of them by writing letters to the people involved in the productions, in which he outlined several suggestions on various things. Suffice to say, he didn't get the job, although I'm certain that he listed himself as an uncredited consultant on R1 simply because he attended the interview. In short, lights, camera, exaggeration. This one guy, he had a period of about 4 years where he listed his job as stay-at-home dad, under which he wrote, "Learned conflict resolution techniques." We were hiring for flight dispatchers at my previous company. Came across a guy's resume where it says that he was a train operator/engineer. We were intrigued as to why such a qualified person would go for a flight dispatcher position until we read the second page, which had the actual job description. He was the conductor of the train inside the local mall for kids. I mean, kudos for the wordplay, but don't waste my time. A guy's resume read like a story told in the third person. James has been interested in IT since he took his first computer class at blank junior high. He always excelled at typing, getting high marks in word processing course at blank high school. Since then, he has moved on to deeper knowledge with computers, computer systems, spelt wrong, and what makes them tick. James built his first computer in his bedroom from parts he scavenged from Skid Row in 1996. He gained a great amount of still learning how components fit together and how hardware and software join together to make synergies. He took his love of computers and worked at blank PC repair in the summer of 2001, building, repairing, and reinstalling hardware, software, and operating systems, bracket OSs. And on for several more paragraphs, typos and run-on sentences included. I had 2 girls, roughly 19 to 23, come in and apply for a job. Both at the same time gave me their resumes, and the only change on them was the name. Otherwise, they were identical. They were also crap resumes because they had no previous job experiences, and the only thing listing were high school poetry awards. Also printed in color with a light blue background and a flowery border. Not a CV, but a phone interview for a simple laborer's job. I asked the guy one simple question pertaining to the requirement of the job. Are you physically capable of digging, raking, and pushing a wheelbarrow full of soil? The man said yes, and the next morning he showed up at the job site and was a cripple, could barely walk at all. My dad owns a vacuum repair business. One bloke sent a CV in, he misspelled vacuum. Sure, that's not a big deal, vacuum's a weird word to spell. The rest of his CV was rife with spelling and punctuation errors, but it's an engineering job, so it's not that much of a concern. If he can fix a vacuum, who gives a damn if he knows the difference between THEIR and THERE? The main problem was that he wrote the CV all in caps and had no previous engineering experience. Not even theoretical. He had had no education in it. Managed an electronics retail store, so not too many resumes, but lots of terrible applications nonetheless. Had someone list being tall and swimming as skills. Recently had someone who did attach a resume in which he put both his references and experiences as available upon request, and listed his nationality, birth date, parents' names, and marital status below a selfie. I mean, to be fair, tall is one of those skills you just can't teach these days. A guy calling himself Darth Ice sent in his resume in Star Wars theme with a black background, yellow font, and all the shebangs. I've discarded many resumes based on the presence of emojis. One that just had babysitting experience, a first name, and her objective was a Star Trek quote. She was 25. I worked in higher education, and my last role included being responsible for tracking all the applications of interest, which was a year-round open application for adjuncts who might be available to teach last minute. This one guy kept popping up over and over again when I would update my spreadsheet for the hiring committee. He went to a lot of trouble to create a new username for each submission, because since it was always open, you can't reapply for the same position. The dude's CV was just one page, and I could never figure out why he was submitting it to me. There was nothing about teaching or education in the document, and he didn't include any people as references in the system. He would just type "not applicable" in the boxes or "see resume." The single page was just his name in a really large font at the top. Everything was centered on the page too, followed by his place and date of birth, his wife's name and when they got married, and the names and birth dates of his children, including his stepson. A long list of hobbies and interests, like reading John Grisham, fishing, vacations with the family, and TV shows, and that was it. I don't know if he thought an expression of interest was like expressing his interests, and I always wondered why he dedicated so much time to apply for a job I wasn't sure he understood. When did an idiot say something cringe or incriminating into his microphone mid-game? A group of 5 of us had been doing several runs in World of Warcraft and had been chatting it up the whole time about whatever. One woman's boyfriend came into her room and asked her if, when she was done, if she could take a look under his nether regions. He had a bump on his bag and didn't know if it was a pimple or a boil. He was talking about how much it hurt and itched, and he tried using a mirror but couldn't get the angle right. She let him go on for about 2 to 3 minutes as we were all busting up laughing before she finally told him her mic was on. Oh my god, this happened to me. My press to talk button was stuck, and I'd gotten up to feed the cat. I'd always sing songs for him as I'm feeding him, and apparently my mic picked up everything. So when I got back, my entire raid was singing about my cat, and I was as embarrassed as all heck. I don't sing in public, like, at all. I find it so embarrassing. A kid on PC arguing with his mum because he didn't want dinner. I was so hungry, and his mum sounded sweet. This was like last month on Call of Duty Modern Warfare. The guy was on the phone with his bank accountant, probably, or at least I hope, and he was saying his credit card info, social security, and a bunch of private info. Hopefully he's still safe. Older sister was telling his little brother, our teammate, that it's her time to play and she'll turn off the console if he doesn't get up. He insisted, "Just this one match, please! No! No!" and disconnected. Lol. So basically, me and 3 other guys on Discord. One was living with his parents and grandparents. His grandpa barges into his room and after mumbling something he yelled, "Pull down your pants!" The guy was just wearing some dirty pants, but we fully misunderstood the situation. Or you didn't misunderstand the conversation and you just way too readily accepted your friend's explanation? Nah, I'm kidding. It was probably just one of those spontaneous colonoscopist visits like that guy who burst into my house the other day. Weird that I never got the results for that exam. Here we go. I have a story for this one. So me and my friend, let's call him Ben, had a goal a while back to complete every achievement in Minecraft on the X-Bone. We put nearly 300 hours into the world, and whenever we'd play, his girlfriend would always go on her phone to help pass the time. This one particular evening, we were building my house, well, more of a tower, and he starts placing random blocks in places where they aren't supposed to be. I asked if he was okay, and he said that he was fine and carried on building. As time went on, his breathing got progressively heavier until about 5 minutes later I asked if his girl was going south of the border on him. What I didn't know is that he was in fact getting a down-under kiss and he was getting close to arriving until his girlfriend heard me over the mic and started laughing and ruined the moment. I'm sorry, Ben, but I think that's a lesson learned not to multitask. Obviously, Minecraft is more important. Not bad, but memorable. I got to my buddy's house and he was playing Call of Duty. He has his headset on. This house is a work in progress, so every time I get there, something's changed. I walk into his gaming room and see that he's made some modifications to the house, and I ask him about them. He proceeds to give me a lesson on construction fundamentals and building technique and the why and why not. After about 5 or so minutes, he realizes that he was mic'd the whole time and he goes, "Oh, crap." And someone chimes in, "Hey, so that was actually really interesting and all, but can you guys shut the frick up?" I don't think we've ever laughed as hard as that. I don't have any as weird as the ones here, but I definitely recall one time getting ready to pull a raid boss in World of Warcraft and hearing one kid's mother yell at him to take out the trash. The kid was 16 or something, and all 24 of us were like, "Nope, not pulling yet, go take out the trash for your mum." I also have a friend who used to fall asleep on Discord after taking Ambien, and some of those conversations were hilarious, but I'm pretty sure he knows where I live and will unalive me if I share them here. I caught my friend tickling his pickle on mic thinking that he'd muted himself. I heard him groaning and then I shouted, "No climaxes in my party." My boyfriend never has his mic on, but one of the rare times he was talking to his friend, his dad came around the corner to feed his sister's bunnies, his sister being away at college, and sang the song he always sings at the top of his lungs when he goes to feed them. "Bunny, bunny, bunny, bunnies!" in falsetto. Years ago, Halo 3. My cat was being unusually affectionate and cuddly. I fragged a guy in multiplayer and was distracted by the cat. I start asking, "Who has a fuzzy belly? Who's my fuzzy girl?" And it turned out the guy I killed could still hear my voice and he was having none of it. I wish I still had the Xbox Live message he sent. He seemed really insecure about his fuzzy belly. I was playing Rainbow Six Vegas a whole while back, got myself a few friends in, and also had a couple of stragglers. We were pretty decent as a team, we'd not lost for a few days, although playtime had only been a few hours due to work. Anyway, these stragglers who joined got added to our chat. I talked strategy with them and they seemed alright, 2 brothers from Georgia. We start playing and we're abseiling down the roof, running through casinos, and everything is going well. Our squad are racking up kills, but one of the stragglers keeps dying. His brother is complaining. The guy who keeps dying grabs the briefcase and runs. We're calling to get him to come to the lift shafts, but he ignored us, runs straight to the windows and gets taken out. Drops the case in a room packed full of enemies. We can't get it in time, we lose. The useful brother starts complaining and muttering under his breath, then talks loudly, like we couldn't hear him before, and says sorry for his brother's mistake. We'll win now. We switch to defense. The useless brother runs straight out of the vault despite telling him to wait at the back stairs, goes and gets killed again. His brother is mumbling again, clearly agitated. Now the useful brother is defending the case. Anyone who gets past the 3 main defense points, he's picking them off and just doing great. The case never leaves our sight, and this is all despite the back stairs not being covered. Useless brother sees someone else in the case room, decides to throw a flashbang. We all get blinded. Look around and the case is gone. As we're going chasing after it, the useless brother apologizes. His brother says, "Whatever," and in his mumble voice, he seemingly thinks that no one can hear him say, "This kind of crap is why I went number 2 in your gym bag." The character of the useless bro stops dead in front of me as we're chasing the enemy. Then there's a loud noise from the other bro's mic, followed by what sounded like the biggest slap, open palm strike that I've ever heard. Useful bro's character suddenly stops too. Me and my squad are laughing, wondering what's going on, as we lose the game, and on the mics we can just hear one of the bros crying. And then a Georgian mum shouting in the distance. It wasn't really a "this dude forgot to turn off his mic" moment, but rather he was trying to play it off as if it was. I was playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare when one of my teammates, Jason, died, and was left to spectate me. After a while he said he had to leave and then proceeded to moan loudly. At first I thought he was just cranking it until he leaned into the mic and in the worst girl voice you can imagine said, "Man, I can't believe Jason has a 7-inch eggplant." I just laughed uncontrollably and he responded with, I'm sorry man, I was getting busy." I mean, if you're gonna lie, why stop at 7 inches? Well, one time my husband and I started getting frisky after he was killed in a match. Got a text from his brother who he was playing with like 10 minutes later telling us to turn off his mic. Back in the Halo 2 days, a teen was getting yelled at to get off the game. He called his mum the B-word and she responded with a butt-whooping that sounded like a hyena getting mauled by 50 cats in a plywood box. This teen's kid brother actually got on during the beatdown saying, "Oh, hell yeah, he never lets me play." The little man was actually pretty good fun from what I remember too. Chillin' in squad when someone doesn't have push to talk on and they start yelling at their family and occasionally letting out a giant scream from dying. Yeah, sorry about that, I have push to talk now and I no longer live with my family. Now my only problem is that I suck at any and all games and my neighbors still complain about my screaming when I die. Was playing on a CSGO server, this squeaker comes in the server acting all tough, trash-talking, mocking other people. Now, it's about 11 at night right now and we hear this kid saying, "But mommy, I don't want to go to sleep, I want to play." We all start laughing our butts off and he disconnected. Years ago, I was playing Gears of War on Xbox Live and this kid joined my game. From the sound of his voice, he couldn't have been older than 12 or 13, but he was talking trash the whole time. You know, the usual stuff. "You suck, you're gay, fudge your mom," etc. Apparently his mum walked in while he was in the middle of throwing yet another one of his dumb insults at me and his mic was on. She came in and was like, "What? What are you saying? Is that how I raised you?" There was a slapping sound. Huh? You gonna talk like that again? Answer me, did I raise you like that?" More slaps. And he's crying and saying, "Mama, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Mama, please, let me finish my game." And she's like, "Aw, hell no, you're not finished nothing." And then he's dropped out of the game. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It's not necessarily him forgetting to turn his mic off, but him not being able to. It's been several years and it could just have been a hoax, but it certainly shook me up. I believe it was around the time of Halo 3. I'd been on Xbox Live, fooling around in Map Maker with some buddies. One of them had been dealing with a rough home life and often talked about his fear that his parents were into some trouble with other people. Being kids, me and the other guy brushed it aside as just nonsense. But one day we were playing and we hear a loud bang from his mic. He was yelling at his mum and then there were multiple loud bangs in quick succession, almost like someone had been firing a piece on full auto. We hadn't heard him over the sounds, but when they stopped, his tone of voice changed, and it sounded more like a sobbing, yelling for his mum. My buddy and I were shook now, trying to find out what the frick happened. We could just hear sobbing and he wasn't returning to the game, and after about 10 or 15 minutes of no contact from him, he just disconnected and we'd never heard from him since. Just today I was playing Modern Warfare and this guy on my team had his mic open. His phone rang in the background and he picked up to his wife talking about how he needs to get off his butt and go to the store. He led with profanities and ended up with, "Fine, witch," and went back to just playing. I said into the game chat, "So, are you gonna go to the store?" Unfazed, he said, "Nah." Some guy confessing his love to a girl and then singing a song to her. It worked in the end. We all cheered for him. Basically, my friend. He always keeps his mic on, and this one time I heard his parents arguing in the background, and he literally screamed, "Yay, 2 Christmases!" And then there was silence. Oh god, I was that guy once. Nothing scandalous, just embarrassing. You know how sometimes couples will be all sugary sweet lovey-dovey to each other when they're alone, in a way that they'd probably not do in front of other people because it's so cringy? Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about, people in relationships. Anyway, I had my headset on and I was being a typical idiot with my friends. My then partner was nearby, so I took off the headset, forgot to mute the mic, and commenced the instant transformation into this over-the-top cutesy love kitten. You can imagine how much I wanted to crawl under a rock and die a few minutes later. That was like 12 years ago. I've been extra careful about the mic from then on. I was playing World of Warcraft with a friend and he was teaching me the basics. My mum comes into my room and yells in the heaviest smoker accent possible, "What up, lads?" What she said next was interrupted because I ripped out my microphone. My friend was frightened for a good minute, thinking someone had broken into my house. Someone with an open mic instructing his girlfriend to give him a down-under kiss. I was playing a game after a few beers once and I was that dude. Me and the ex were talking crap around the house. We were weird, we'd broken up after she grew up and I didn't. Like, it was really weird. We'd make weird noises around the house in some sort of ritual. Seagull noises, cat noises, poor imitations of weapons going off. And here's what my group would have heard. First her making a cat noise, she had a really realistic meow, then me, gotta go help my partner with something, followed by me trying and failing for some reason to drop group, then her meowing, getting more insistent, then me going then her abruptly turning the meow into a gurgle, then a perfectly normal conversation about food, except for a couple of weird words thrown in. Then I heard snickering coming from my PC. He started reading out loud to himself a particularly racy, furry anime novel featuring many, many tentacles. A friend of ours had a full-on seizure while we were in voice chat. We just hung around for about half an hour listening to him breathing and making sure he's okay, and after he recovered and spoke to us a few days later, we got info of family near him to call if it happens again. That stuff is super scary because we all knew he was having one, but we couldn't do anything and don't even know if we're listening to him die or not. It was a video call on Zoom, but one guy literally turned his camera on, picked his nose, ate it, and then turned his camera back off. Repeatedly. He turned his camera on and off repeatedly too, and he completely looked like it was just some subconscious thing. Do you think he missed a click at some point and thought he was actually turning it off to do that? Or was this the ultimate power play? Like he was staring at the camera the whole time while this happened? I usually play Sea of Thieves in the morning, and since my friends don't have the game, I pick up players from Xbox Live posts. Keep in mind I live in Greece and our time zone is semi-opposite with America's. In other words, my morning is a very late night to my teammates. This results in meetings with many interesting people such as substance addicts, and even a substance dealer once. Or drunk people. I don't even know, whatever. But my personal award would go to the guy who was pretty chill when playing and was sounding like he was fairly close to my age. I'm 18. He was actually a pretty cool guy and we had fun for a couple of hours. Then at some point we heard a younger girl's voice saying that the baby has waken up again in a sleepy voice. The dude apologized and said he'd be right back. Then he proceeded to sing to the baby until the baby slept, which I found rather cute. And plus, there was nothing going on in-game since we were in the middle of our journey, so the rest of the crew didn't mind either. And as a side note, the guy had a nice voice. Anyway, when he came back, we were about to tease him, but the first thing he said was, "Sorry, I had to put my son to sleep," which raised some questions because the guy sounded serious, and we all stood in silence because, like I said, he sounded fairly young. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't ask too many questions because I respect someone's private life, but the guy was very open about it to me, so me and another crewmate were intrigued. Turns out he was 17 and his girl, the voice from before, was 16. They had a protection incident and ended up with their 4-month-old son, but they were very happy about it. Some moments passed and crewmate number 4 was fairly quiet this whole time, and his character wasn't moving. We asked if everything was okay and we got no response. But after a while we heard some snorting coming from crewmate number 4's mic. We couldn't stop laughing, and the next day crewmate number 4 admitted that the song made him go to sleep despite his best efforts. He had a wireless headset and proceeded to go number 2. Then he went, "I'm back." Clearly didn't mute his mic like he thought he had. I wasn't playing or watching the live stream, but during an iRacing event, NASCAR driver Kyle Larson didn't realize his mic was on for the entire group and therefore was being broadcasted via Twitch. And he said, "Can anybody hear me? Hey, N-word." The very next day, he lost his real-life NASCAR sponsors and his real-life ride. He was part of the drive for a diversity program, a program dedicated to attracting minorities and women to NASCAR. Bro, imagine losing your career on iRacing. Okay, so this one was actually on me. I first got Call of Duty 3 from PS4 a while back. I was a serious squeaker, so eventually I joined my first online match and was getting whooped. I kid you not, my mum was making tater tots that night and proceeded to yell, loud enough for my dinky little earbud mic to pick up. "Owen, your tater tots are ready!" Not my proudest moment, but I still laugh at it. I was in a raid and one of the healers speaks up in the middle of a fight and says, "Oh crap, I've got to go." The guild leader was understandably all, "What? Why?" And my dude just responded, "Tornado." He forgot to turn his mic off, so he heard the sounds of wind and the building shaking in the background until the sound of wood cracking and the audio just went absolutely insane. The guild leader had to mute him at that point. He turned out to be okay, but we didn't find that out for a week or two after the event. Years ago, World of Warcraft was still only vanilla and raids needed 40 people. Our guild was quite tight with each other, even with about 60 people in it. So the jokes could get personal, but still have heart. One time we went raiding, and in the middle of it a guy asks for a quick break. Less than 5 minutes, he said. Raid leader said, "Okay, let's have a short break then for everyone." Well, everyone went to the loo and grabbed a drink and refilled the side snacks, all done within 5 minutes. Except that guy. He still had his mic on too, so suddenly someone hears something and tells us to be quiet. 39 people on TeamSpeak, we went silent and started to listen to the guy doing the deed with his girlfriend. All from start to end, and every one of us in silence with the occasional giggle on certain moments. During the deed, they said the most cliché things to each other, things like how bad of a girl she is, deserving of his rooster, how she wants him to go faster, deeper, and so on, plus the occasional butt slap, of course. After about 15 minutes, he came back and we all tried to be normal. So did he. Our raid leader said that he was late, but he apologized, saying that his mother had called. We all laughed, and he was at first confused, but understood what had happened. He was very ashamed, and we had a good laugh. The extra part in this, we had a couple of minors in the raid, and some of them came to me in the days after to talk about it. I was the oldest female in the guild, and some of them called me the guild mother. They were confused about the clichés and name-calling during the deed, so I had a lot of explaining to do. I was raiding Blackrock Foundry in World of Warcraft. We pull a boss and one of our hunters is standing there doing nothing. She dies and her mic comes on. All we hear is super loud moaning and gasping. She's quickly removed from the server and we down the boss. About 10 minutes later, she rejoins the server and goes, "Sorry, my boyfriend decided to frick me right before we pulled." Our guildmaster kicked her on the spot. Apparently this was not the first time it had happened. Wolf Kitty, if you're still out there, thank you for this story. Lawyers. What was your facepalm moment in court? I was representing a plaintiff in a hit-and-run case. Plaintiff is testifying and is, despite me preparing them for several hours the previous day, an absolutely terrible witness for her own case. Like she couldn't even identify the street she was crossing when she was hit by the car. It was a major highway and we'd gone through the sequence of events countless times the day before the hearing. The "oh crap" moment came during cross-examination. Defense counsel pulls out a picture of my client dressed up and ready to hit the club, which was posted to Facebook the day after the alleged incident. I, thinking quickly, object because the timestamp refers to when it was posted, not when it was taken. Defense counsel shows the picture to my client and asks her when the picture was taken. Sure enough, they say it was taken the day after the accident when she was supposedly in unbearable pain. Oh crap. Just as well, they didn't deserve to get anything. When I was in college, I was a bailiff. Guy is on trial for murder. First witness testified that she saw the defendant shoot the victim. Second witness states the same. Police officer testimony is that he arrived at the scene and defendant was there holding the piece. Coroner testimony is that the first bullet hit the victim in the arm, the second one hit the victim in the torso, and the third one hit the victim in the heart, which was the fatal shot. The defendant yells out, "See, that proves I didn't do it. I only shot the motherfudger twice." Sat in on a personal injury case where the plaintiff broke their leg in an accident and had a doctor on the stand as an expert. The woman's lawyer begins questioning the doctor about their experience with leg injuries. He was a well-known orthopedic surgeon in the area. She asks if he's ever treated a tibular fracture. The leg bones are tibia and fibula, by the way, to which the doctor only answers, "No, I've never treated a tibula." Then she starts grilling him with questions about the tibula. About 6 to 7 questions afterwards, she asks, "How did you get a medical license and have been able to practice medicine this long if you've never treated a tibular fracture?" and begins a small rant about going after his credentials and those that gave it to him, to which he simply responds, "There is no bone named the tibula." The lawyer became beetroot red and everyone in the court tried their best to keep from laughing, including the judge. If you're grilling a well-known expert in a particular field and you're getting quizzical looks from them, it can sometimes be worth wondering why you, a person who knows nothing about the subject matter, seem to be winning the discussion. It could be a trap, or maybe, like this lawyer, you're asking questions about made-up bones. Check yourself before you legally wreck yourself. I was a baby lawyer in my first year representing the 19-year-old child of some rich people in San Mateo County, California. My client had gone on a bit of a shoplifting spree and we were cleaning all her cases up with a global plea, meaning we handled them all at once. Being new, I filled out the plea form wrong, swapping the counts she was charged with for the counts she was pleading to. It's an easy mistake to make. Every court has their own unique form and I was unfamiliar with San Mateo's. The judge calls my line, starts reading off the plea form, notices the mistake and then starts screaming at the top of his lungs, "Counsel, what is this? What is this? Is this your first day on the job? This is a court of law and we do not accept mistakes. Fill this plea form out correctly or I'll have you taken into custody for contempt." I did not expect a reaction like that. My client, who'd clearly just taken a huge rip of illegal substances at 8 a.m. and who was wearing an all-pink velvet tracksuit, was looking at me like I was the biggest idiot in the world. I corrected the plea form. The judge made me wait until the very end of the calendar to take my plea. Afterward, he called me up to the bench. In private, he told me, "I'm sorry to ream you like that. Everyone messes the plea form up, so I always pick the youngest lawyer to yell at. The older guys will grumble and complain, but if you noticed, they all fixed their forms, and we didn't have any more problems. It keeps the calendar running smooth. Where did you go to law school?" After that, he invited me into his office for coffee and gave me some really good life and work advice. Turns out he likes talking to new lawyers. In short, a judge loses his crap in court over a simple mistake. Turns out it was all a show for the other lawyers, and I have one of the worst and best court experiences of my early career. Represented a woman charged with multiple very serious felonies in the state of Virginia. She insisted that in the months before the offense, she had been seriously dating one of the detectives who ultimately wound up investigating and testifying in her case. For a variety of reasons, I trusted this client and believed her, even though the detective never disclosed the relationship in his report. So during his testimony, I ask, "Detective Smith, you had a romantic relationship with Miss Defendant, correct?" He goes, "What? No," and is visibly offended. The judge looks at me like I've lost my mind. The Commonwealth attorney audibly says, "What?" I'm freaking out because a large part of my cross and argument was focused on the bias formed by the prior relationship, and now I've got nothing and I've lost all credibility. I try again. "Detective Smith, have you had relations with Miss Defendant?" As the Commonwealth rises to object and the judge starts to scold me, the detective goes, "Oh yeah, we did it. It just wasn't very, romantic." The judge acquitted my client of the relatively minor charge that the detective in my story was involved with, but convicted of the other, much more serious charges that detective had nothing to do with. There was a confession and video on the serious charges, so it was kind of a no-brainer. Sorry, I'm being intentionally vague, but there are no confidentiality concerns, since this all happened in open court. But it's just distasteful to give out too much information about a client. The detective was not disqualified, his testimony was not thrown out. Impeachment, no matter how good, doesn't result in you getting to throw out a witness's testimony entirely. By the way, it wasn't really the doing of the deed that was the issue, it was that he didn't disclose it to anyone, and his repeated insistence under questioning that he didn't disclose it because it was irrelevant. Like Watergate, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up that gets you. But I don't get to demand the judge throw out the testimony or that charge just because the cop failed to disclose a prior relationship with the defendant. I just get to point it out, argue it in closing, and then hope the jury also sees the relevance. In the UK, and bear with me on this one, I was in court listening to the most boring old defense lawyer you've ever seen. He was questioning the arresting officer in the case. It was substances or something like that. Anyway, he's droning on about every little detail, and the magistrate was constantly telling him to hurry along. The arresting officer was getting noticeably annoyed, and the room became pretty empty pretty quickly. Everyone was very bored and annoyed. He was droning about details that I'm not sure anyone was really listening to or cared about. Anyway, he went over arrest times and the likes with the officer, time he admitted the suspect and released him. He had bored the officer to the point where the guy was barely paying attention. So he was admitted in at 21:45 on the night in question. Yep. And released the night after. Yep. And what time was that exactly? Just after 10 p.m.? Yeah, that's about right. What time after 10 p.m.? I don't know, 10:15 maybe. So my client was detained for more than 24 hours. Correct? What? The penny dropped. The officer had let his guard down and had revealed that he had kept the defendant for more than 24 hours, which is the max time for detention in the UK. The defense rested, and the magistrate threw out the case immediately. Well played, sir. Well played. There you go, boring people of the internet. If you feel depressed that your friends fall asleep in the middle of your stories, and that the light seems to leave their eyes when you open your mouth, just get a job as a lawyer. You can be a superstar when you drone the opposing party into submission. Got called for jury duty. I was at the jury selection phase and they asked if anyone here thinks they should not, blah blah. Defendant was in the room. I raised my hand. The defending lawyer looked at me like, oh, this ought to be good, and asked me to explain. I suggested I tell them in private. He insisted I tell the courtroom. I said, okay, I probably shouldn't be on this jury because I was on a previous jury for this man, which returned a guilty verdict. The lawyer's face went, oh crap. Commotion and a wait while they looked up records. Yep, verified. The whole jury was now tainted. Everyone goes home and they start over. I was interning for a judge. We were in the middle of voir dire for what was frankly not that exciting of a criminal case. Half-day trial expected, not salacious details or violence or anything. 75 potential jurors in the room, and when my judge didn't let a guy out of jury duty because he'd have to pick up his kids, that guy proceeded to say in front of everyone that if he's made to show up next week, he'd make it the shortest trial ever and find him guilty right out the gate. My judge was an incredibly even-keeled guy, nothing shook him or got a rise out of him, and he was an expert at figuring out what he wanted to say in the most neutral fashion possible before he said it. Conversations with him took forever because there was a pause before every sentence. But then, this guy had just poisoned an entire jury pool of 75 people. We had to individually question each person to see if that little outburst was going to affect their impartiality. 75 in-camera interviews later, the judge pulls the guy back in front of everyone and begins to scream at him about disrespecting him, the courts, and every other juror's time. Me, the attorneys, and the court reporter go white-faced because we didn't know this was coming. The guy didn't have to sit for jury duty, but I still don't know if he got to pick his kids up since he spent a couple of days in jail for contempt. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was involved in a pretty messy custody case. The other party was playing a lot of stupid games and kept requesting continuances. I requested a substance test, which the judge ordered. However, the defendant didn't submit it. To clarify, he did show up, he just stood in front of the loo for literally 2 hours and claimed he couldn't go number 1. I was representing the plaintiff, so the burden was on me. I called multiple witnesses that testified to the defendant's substance use. So the opposing counsel decides to call their client for direct examination and asks, "You don't use smack, right?" That is, for the non-lawyers, a very stupid question for many reasons, especially considering his client didn't show up for his substance test. However, I fully expected the defendants to just lie and say he was clean. After the question was asked, there was a really long pause and the defendant said, Yeah, I do." My head almost exploded. I didn't ask any questions on cross-examination because I didn't want to muddy the waters. I won, and the child is doing great. Mine actually happened while I was sitting in the jury pool during voir dire. The case was a double homicide and the jury pool filled the entire courtroom. If you're not familiar with voir dire, it's when the lawyers ask the potential jurors questions to determine who they want to sit on the jury and who they want to exclude. It's a long and boring process for almost everyone involved, but 9 times out of 10 it's the most important stage in a case. So the lawyers are asking us questions, and if that question applied to you, you raise your hand and they hand you a microphone to answer the question. The question asked was, do you or anyone you know have prior knowledge of this case? So this older gentleman raised his hand, is handed the mic and proceeds to say, "Yeah, I work at the police station as a janitor, and I heard two detectives talking about him," points to the defendant, "and they were saying he was about as guilty as sin." We all stared open-mouthed at the guy, and I start chuckling because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Naturally, the defense attorney asked to approach the bench, followed quickly by the state prosecutor. After some quick and energetic whispering, the judge addressed the man. "Do you realize what you just did? You potentially poisoned the entire jury pool. I'll be calling your boss and you'll be hearing about this. You can count on that. You're dismissed, sir, but this isn't over." The man was escorted out, and then the judge addressed the remaining jury pool, which was still in the mostly packed room. Now, I want you all to disregard what that man just said. I'm sure if any of you were ever accused of a crime like this, you would want a fair trial, and not to be condemned based on the words of one old man. I've been in court many times since, but never have I seen that level of downright jaw-dropping absurdity again. My boss had to defend a small-time delinquent as a duty solicitor. Before going to court, he asked her what he should do. She explained to him if he was cooperative and truthful, his sentence would be milder. After hearing the case, the judge asked him if he wanted to add something. He got up and explained to the judge, "My counsel told me to be truthful, so I wanted to tell you that not only did I do the robbery I'm being heard for, but also several others in the region." He continued to admit to several robberies that had been unsolved yet, and everyone, even the state attorney, were facepalming. Oh boy, when you follow your instructions on the class presentation to the absolute letter, look up and realize that your teacher, friends, and even your bullies are just facepalming and embarrassed for you. This has the same energy, but on a much grander scale with much more serious consequences. I almost feel bad for this hardened criminal. Literally the first thing I ever did, I was just a law student intern. The guy had a legit defense on a substance possession case, substances found in a jacket, guy wasn't wearing the jacket, they were going to have a very difficult time proving the jacket belonged to my guy. Had a long meeting with the client, explained everything. The client was excited. Day of the preliminary hearing, the guy shows up and sits down directly in front of the officer who arrested him, while wearing the jacket in question. The exact same jacket we were going to say they couldn't prove belonged to him. Not in court, but at tribunal, and also I was plaintiff, suing for wrongful termination. My rep said, "So you terminated him because he was ill?" The employer said, "Yes, sir." "And he was ill because he's disabled?" "Yes, sir." "So you fired someone for being disabled?" "Yes, sir." I was in court for a directions hearing. The judge was already in a bad mood and asked why we were here for such a seemingly pointless litigation. Without giving details, he was right. The barrister starts to make our case, and I'm making notes about areas we need to further explore when I hear, "Excuse me, why were you so rude to me?" The client, who'd been told not to come, had come to court that day and was evidently incensed by the judge questioning the merit of their case. They berated the judge for about 3 minutes, with me and my co-counsel first stunned and then trying to shut them up before the judge adjourned the hearing. The case did not go very well, to my client's surprise and fury. Not me, but my former law partner. She was in court representing a client. I think in a hearing for a restraining order against her soon-to-be ex-husband. Our client was telling the judge that when they met to exchange the children for visitation, the ex had kicked her. He immediately, angrily shouted, "She can't prove it. I didn't leave a mark." "Thanks, buddy." Probably the funniest one I ever came across happened to a colleague. We were prosecutors then. 18-year-old defendant applying for bail. He needed a residential address and got his dad to show up at court to confirm that the family home was available to him. The defense lawyer gets old dad to confirm that son can stay at the family home. Dad says yes. My fellow prosecutor gets up and asks dad, "Do you really want him home?" Dad goes off the deep end. "Jesus, the grief he's bought me and his mother. At all hours, throwing smack, hiding stolen property in the garage, all-night parties. I'm on antidepressants and the wife's had a nervous breakdown." Dad goes off on one for 5 solid minutes. As the defendant gets taken back to the cells, he calls out, "Thanks, Dad. I owe you one." In pre-mediation meeting, once for an uninsured motorist, an insured had alleged that she couldn't walk without the aid of a cane and had a pronounced limp after an accident due to a lower back injury and a shooting pain in her right leg. The doctor's notes didn't support anything but a subjective injury after a few weeks, but she was still treating it 2 years later and going to new physicians. We had followed her covertly to see if she was really using the cane and had a limp. We got footage of her carrying like 4 grocery bags in each arm to her car in a Walmart parking lot, walking perfectly fine. When she got to her car, she even opened the trunk of her SUV without putting any bags down and lifted the gate with her knee part way. Her elderly mother was with her using a particularly decorative purple cane with a flower pattern on it. They followed her to a doctor appointment an hour later and she's on video using her mother's cane and walking with a limp that would give Forrest Gump a run for his money. Never did follow up on how that played in the mediation, but I can only imagine it gave some attorney a facepalm moment for the ages. 2 moments in a DUI trial. The first was a passenger testifying for driver's sobriety when the DA asks her, "You keep saying he was sober, but are you even TIPS certified?" Which is a course for bartenders so they can recognize drunk patrons. She was certified. 2. The head of the county's blood lab accidentally admitted he'd cranked the sensitivity of his machines way up because he was, quote, experimenting. I didn't entirely get while I was putting the script together that these were in the same case. My goodness. It's good to know that the ruthless agents of the state that we can end up in front of make whoopsies like this when they have brain toots or don't get their cup of coffee before the trial. Makes me feel better about messing up major parts of my life like this on a daily basis. I was a defendant. As a teenager, I got busted with a couple of buddies throwing eggs at cars. We were actually only in the courtroom for our sentencing, and there was no trial. The judge called each of us up individually to ask us if we had anything to say. One of my friends tells the judge that he's a good kid who doesn't normally do things like this. That's a lie, we used to do it all the time. And that, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I wish there was a video of my other friend and I sitting on the benches watching this happen. We simultaneously dropped our heads into our hands because we couldn't believe that idiot just said that. The judge was not pleased and she took the opportunity to remind him that going to a store, buying eggs, going to another location across town, and then throwing those eggs at cars was not just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Late to the party here, but as a law student we were allowed to make court appearances under the supervision of an assistant district attorney. I was doing arraignments and my ADA said, "Don't talk to the judge unless he asks you specific questions." So the judge and the defense attorney were going back and forth about when the next court date would be. The judge wanted a specific date, let's say 4/20. The defense attorney was adamant that she couldn't do that date. In my file, I had a calendar with a big X over 4/20 saying, "Do not schedule." The judge and defense attorney go back and forth for several minutes. The judge wanted 4/20 and the defense attorney kept saying no. I was keeping my mouth shut because the judge hadn't asked me directly. Finally, the defense attorney relents and agrees to 4/20. The judge turns to me and says, "Do the people agree with the 20th of April?" At which point I say, "Sorry, Your Honor, but we cannot schedule for that day." The judge looked at me for a second and then just ripped into me. "Mr. Jones, you just heard me and the defense go back and forth for several minutes about a date you knew the people couldn't do. Do you like wasting the court's time?" It went on like that for a few minutes, him just berating me in front of about 200 people in court in Brooklyn. Finally, after me apologizing profusely and him giving me a withering glare, we moved on and went to the next case. At the next break, the judge approached and said, "Mr. Jones, please approach the bench." I thought I was really in for it. I walked up to the bench, the judge came down to talk to me and said with a big smile, "Don't worry about it, I was just giving you a hard time. Welcome to the Brooklyn Criminal Court." I was a character witness for my childhood dog in a civil trial between our neighbors and my parents. Opposing counsel was questioning me. I wasn't even out of elementary school at the time, and he asked if our dog was aggressive. She was a Rottweiler and very loving and incredibly protective of me and my siblings. His final question to me is one that I'll never forget. He asked, "Did your father tell you what to say before you came into court today?" I responded, "Yes." Then he asked, "What did he tell you to say?" I said, "The truth." Now, I was too young to remember the courtroom reaction, but according to my father, the judge audibly guffawed and the opposing counsel lost all the wind out of his sails. Ladies, what do you wish self-proclaimed nice guys would understand? Romantic comedies are nothing like real life, and using the tactics shown in them will only creep the object of your affections out, not win them over. They should be treated just like fantasy movies because that's pretty much what they are. Just a fantasy you enjoy seeing acted out for various reasons. It's like how it's commonly accepted that adult flicks aren't real. Well, consider romantic comedies emotional adult movies and treat them accordingly, please. Absolutely agreed. Do not show up under my window at 2 a.m. Do not creep until you figure out which hotel I'm staying at on my vacation and send miniature beanie babies that reminded you of me to the hotel addressed to me. Do not awkwardly try to steal my clothing to put on your pillow and sleep with because it smells like me. Do not leap between me and anyone I'm having a conversation with to ensure that they're not going to incapacitate me and commit the unspeakable act in the midst of a huge group of people. And do not find out where I work and consistently leave love letters under my windshield for me to find when I get off my shift. None of these things are acceptable or appreciated. I'm not quoting movie sequences, folks. I'm speaking from experience. And what these guys told me they considered romantic gestures. Although the showing up under the window and the love letter on the windshield ones are pretty 80s rom-com. I think proclaiming yourself a nice guy is the problem in the first place. People who are genuinely considerate and decent don't have to declare themselves honest and nice. People know them to be so by their behavior. Being nice, specifically as a means to impress women, as a means to an end, is not genuinely being nice. It's kind of like the Game of Thrones quote, "Any man who proclaims, 'I am the king,' is no true king." Hearing guys describe themselves as nice immediately makes you immature. It's the equivalent of saying, "I'm not like other girls." Sure. Maybe you are or aren't, but proclaiming it does nothing for proving it. Let people judge you by your deeds, folks, and not just the fancy ones we put on to impress people. Doing a good or nice thing and then shouting, "Did anyone just see the really nice thing I just did?" is not a thing that will turn anyone on, guy, girl, or whatever. Big pick-me energy. Being nice is the bare minimum. You should be nice to everyone, not just the pretty girls, and you should do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you think it'll get you laid. You have to bring more to the table than just being nice. If women see you being nice to pretty women and standoffish to other women, especially if the other women are the pretty one's friends, they tend to see through that sort of thing. Things you don't think girls notice, but that we totally do notice. 1. You've been asking out or hitting on everyone you know as though at random. 2. Except for the girls who are near or below your attractiveness level. And 3. You have major depression or anxiety and are using dating to fix your personal problems. You don't get special credit for showing the bare minimum of human decency. I know this guy who likes to make a number about how he's a decent guy and a good guy and how women used to respect good men. He's not a particularly good man. He's a man who hasn't committed any crimes. He told me a story about how a girl passed out next to him and how she was so lucky to pass out next to such a good guy who didn't commit the unspeakable act. He then likes to tell this heroic story to people and expects praises about how incredibly well he did and what an exceptionally lucky lady she truly was indeed. He goes on about how he goes to school, knows how to shower, and doesn't drink or use substances numerous times a week. These aren't qualities that make someone a good person or a good man. These are qualities that make you a normal person. If the bar you're setting yourself is that you can function like a normally developed adult, should behave, like making your own money, taking care of your hygiene, following the normal social rules like not being rude to others and obeying the law, and that women should be more impressed or grateful for that, you need to either date someone who isn't able to accomplish those things themselves and finds them impressive, or then understand that the other person is doing the exact same thing. I really don't understand where this kind of attitude comes from. Maybe a product of parents who believe their child is a miracle and should be told so from every single thing they don't mess up. Actual nice guys don't have to tell a woman they are the nice guy. My husband is a kind man, a great man. He never once told me he was a good guy or a nice guy, he showed me. So, if you have to tell someone you're nice or good, chances are you probably aren't. My grandpa always had a saying, "Guys with big Johnsons don't gotta brag about it." I like to think it applies to this situation. That just because you're decent to me, it doesn't mean I owe you anything in return. As a guy, I would hate that so much. Some dude does something nice for you, then throws a tantrum when you don't go south of the border on him? Jesus, you didn't ask him to do whatever he did. If you're only acting nice to get her in bed with you, that doesn't actually make you a nice person. 1. Sometimes, while grateful for the nice thing you did, it's too much. For example, at a place I once worked, some guy asked my supervisor if he could have a little extra help on a project he was working on, and could I, the temp at the time, go and help him. When I got to him, he actually used it as a chance to hand me a rose. So, yeah, it was meant to be sweet, but it was completely unprofessional, especially as I was trying to get a permanent job. I also then had to reject him, and he turned hostile towards me. 2. If you're only nice to me, especially as a way to get with me, then no, you're not nice. If I see you being nice to other people, then I'm much more likely to see you as a potential suitor. I lost my best friend over some nice guy BS like this. My significant other and I had gotten into a fight, and he felt the need to console her and let her vent to him. About a week went by, and he began asking if she'd like to meet and talk over drinks. At this point, the fighting was over and we were back to normal. She showed me a message saying I didn't deserve her and that he could treat her better. She deserved someone nicer. Ended up getting into a fist fight with him on my front lawn, and we haven't spoken in 3 years. She's still with me, and we're getting married next month. To add to the points people have already made, one of the reasons why a woman isn't comfortable coming out and saying, "I don't want to date you because I'm not attracted to you," and has to use other softer reasons like, "I'm busy, I'm just out with my girls," etc., is because of a genuine fear that things could go south during the conversation, and a guy who seemed nice at first could get violent or start stalking her. Not that that extreme scenario would happen with every guy she rejects, but it only needs to happen once for it to affect her life. One thing most women experience, frequently, this isn't rare at all, is an exchange like this, especially online. "Hey, beautiful." "Oh, hi. You want to go out sometime?" "Sorry, I have a boyfriend now." "You think you're better than me, you stupid B-word? You're not that hot anyway. I'm not going to do a 4 like you when I'm scoring 8s and 9s practically in my sleep. Have fun being a C-word." We've learned how to soften the blow, and we're afraid of being too direct because that violent outburst would be 3,000 times worse in person than online. These conversations usually start off reasonably nice, and you never know who the violent guy is going to be. They blend in with the other guys, Agent in the Matrix style, so we have to be cautious. If you're not a man who's going to give a woman a negative reaction when you're rejected, I understand being a bit offended or miffed when you just don't get a straight answer, but the thing is, we don't know that when we're saying no, and we're so afraid of the alternative angry, bitter, mean, or even the potential of the violent response. The situation can go so bad so fast, and we've seen or experienced it going so badly before. We're not trying to mess around or play games with you or keep you on the back burner. We're just afraid that if we do straight up say no, we're going to be called fat, ugly, stupid, a whore. We could well be degraded, barked at, or worse, actually attacked. We don't know that you aren't going to turn into a scary jerk in that moment. It can be very weird, scary moments for us. We aren't trying to be cruel or dismissive, but we don't know how else we're supposed to respond without risking our mental or physical health. Guys, please understand that we do in fact like nice people. The fact that you're a nice guy, or so you think, is not the reason someone isn't attracted to you. This is important to note. You get to see if a guy is really nice with how they deal with rejection of any sort. People aren't turning you away because you're nice, it's because you can't necessarily trust that superficial niceness. The 27 back-to-back messages at midnight are why they're turning you away. Desperation is the opposite of sexy, and it very often smells like excessive solicitousness. Reasonably attractive girls are as turned off by a stage 4 clinger as reasonably attractive guys are. You see generosity when you send her a gift that you can't really afford, and she sees pressure play and starts worrying about the strings attached. You see friendly interest when you ask her all about her life and take notes. She sees prying and starts worrying that she can't leave her phone unlocked around you. You see TLC when you want to spend lots of time with her doing all the things she likes. She sees a social vampire of a guy who doesn't have anything worthwhile of his own going on and starts worrying that you expect her to be rich and Amy. You see old-fashioned chivalry when you freak out about her opening her own door or offering to split the check or dealing with a creep without male support. She sees a guy who's so insecure he can't stand the thought of a woman autonomously dealing with a real adult life, and starts worrying about the embarrassing scene you're going to cause when an ex-boyfriend drunk dials her. If I'm not attracted to you, you will only ever be a friend. I should note that this applies to nice girls too. 1. If you're interested, tell her how you feel. No, giving hints doesn't frickin' count as not everyone picks up on those. And it doesn't matter how obvious you think it is, it's all up to her. 2. If you don't tell her how you feel, then she doesn't know how you feel. If there's a friend zone, it's your own damn fault. It's like refusing to go set up a set of stairs and being upset that you're not on the next floor. 3. Not every guy she's dating is a jerk. You only think that because you're jealous. 4. Or maybe he is a jerk to you because you've had a crap attitude toward him and acted all possessive of her. 5. And the reason she's always dating other guys is that at least they asked her out. 6. You just might not be her type. 7. Or she's just not attracted to you. There are people you don't find attractive in life. 8. Don't say you know you're her type. You know nothing. It's up to her. 9. Movies and books lied to you. Pining isn't romantic. 10. If you hold it against her that she's not that into you, you're not a good friend. 11. In fact, unless you want to be her friend for the sake of having her as a friend, you're not her friend. 12. If you offer to do things, you don't expect any repayment unless previously agreed on. 13. If you think she owes you bedroom favors, you are wrong. 14. Leonard Lake thought like this. 15. If you want the deed for your money or services, find a working girl or be a sugar daddy. And 16, as someone else pointed out, too many nice guys go into a scary fit when rejected. We all hear stories about this. See Leonard Lake. Don't do this. And finally, if you expect something in return for being nice, you're not a nice person. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The friend zone is made up. Girls lean on it a lot when they don't want to tell a guy that they're unattractive. If a girl says that she doesn't see you in that way, what she means is that she values your friendship, but that she doesn't want to do the deed with you. End of story. It's not like you got yourself into the situation by being nice or trying to be her friend. If you hadn't been nice, she still wouldn't want to do it. To reiterate, she's not attracted to you. If you want to be friends, be friends. If you're here to do the deed, don't pretend otherwise. Moping and crying about the friend zone isn't winning you any extra points either. Unreciprocated love sucks. We get it. Move on. Yeah, it also kills me when nice guys act like women should just date them anyway because women could never understand how much it hurts to be into someone who isn't into you. Like, the frick? Have a crush love that doesn't get returned is a pretty basic human experience. Men don't own that. Stop protecting us from doing the deed with other people. We're human too, and independent agents quite capable of deciding when we'd like to do the deed and get the deed done to us. If you see us slipping off with a bad boy, it's because we're down to do it, not because our pretty little heads have been manipulated or misled. And if you frame us as children in need of your white knighting, you've no business pursuing a romantic relationship with us anyway, you pervs. Newsflash, doing the deed is awesome. Get on board or get the frick out. Oh my god, yes. I hate it when they say crap like, most guys look at your body, but I'll only love your mind. Or, most guys just want to do the deed, but I'd give you a candlelight dinner and foot massage. Or, girls, stop showing your body. You have to be a lady to marry a gentleman. Most girls take pride in how their body looks and enjoy doing the deed. Even if you're looking for a serious relationship and not a casual hookup, you're still looking for someone who's compatible both emotionally and in the bedroom. Saying stuff like that just sends the message that you subscribe to outdated gender expectations and that a relationship with you would be unexciting and no fun in the bedroom. Women are not vending machines that you can drop kindness coins into until bedroom favors fall out. Womanity is not withholding getting laid from you and waiting for you to say and do the exact right combination of things to unlock the bedroom. Your desperation is repulsive. Women want to do the deed too, but they don't want to risk pregnancy, herpes, or your clingy drama for a crappy bedroom time. She has interests to protect too, and you're mostly antithetical to them. Stop being that. All these are good points, and the narrator wishes he could pass them back to his much younger self when he was just a D-bag nice guy freshman. Thank you for submitting. But what I'm really here to admire is the use of the term womanity. Surprised I haven't seen it before. Being nice is usually the minimum requirement for a partner. For anyone, man or woman, straight or not, who wants a good, fulfilling relationship. Don't think you're clearing a high bar just by not being a total butthole. What else have you got to bring to the table? Work on that. Don't delude yourself into thinking that women don't like to go out with nice guys. Almost every woman who's in a good, loving relationship would describe her partner as someone who is good, kind, and a decent person. So get that out of your head. Only messed up people you wouldn't want to be with anyway are going out with jerks or alphas or whatever else you want to call them. Crushes are often fleeting, so if you're befriending a woman or man to feel them out for dating, make your move quickly. There's a good chance she has a little crush on you too in the beginning, but if you don't make a move and ask her out, she'll just assume you want to be friends and she'll move on to her next crush. 4. Don't get caught up with women who want to vent about their jerk boyfriends. More often than not, this just becomes toxic triangles where she has one guy for doing the deed and romance and one guy for companionship, and nobody is happy. Also, see my above tip on crazy people you wouldn't want to be with anyway. Doing the deed is not a right, it's a privilege, and most of all, it's a choice. You don't get to decide for me. You don't have a right to me. I don't owe you a chance any more than you owe some annoying girl you aren't attracted to a chance. You aren't nice, you're making me uncomfortable when you don't back off, and me calling you on your crappy behavior doesn't make me the one at fault. If you were really my friend, you wouldn't make our relationship about your own desire for bedroom favors and intimacy from me. I didn't friend zone you, you crush zoned me, and you're a really crappy friend if you never even want to be friends in the first place. If you pretend to be my friend, then turn on me when I don't want to F you, you're the one who was manipulating me, not the other way round. Not a female, quoting from an unknown source. Okay, you're nice. That's what everyone else should be. The bare minimum of being a decent person. What else? Are you interesting, funny, clever, charming, talented? Because the guy over there is also nice. He also goes to the gym, volunteers, has a band with his buddies, and is applying to law school. He also doesn't put me on a pedestal for having a hoo-ha. He challenges me to improve and be a better person. He doesn't give me everything I want, he supports me as I work towards my goals on my own. So what the hell else are you offering? Being nice doesn't get you any points. Your score is 0. Loser. If you're a nice guy and she doesn't want to go out with you, it doesn't mean she wants an awful jerk for a boyfriend, she just doesn't want you for a boyfriend. I can't count how many times nice guys have lamented they can't get a date because they're too nice, and girls only want guys that are jerks. They usually follow this up with comments about how they should start being jerks so they'd have better luck. I wish guys would just understand that I'm legitimately just being a kind person and that I'm actually a lesbian who's not interested in men. That if you're not attracting the kind of people you're attracted to, then maybe you are the one who has to change. We're human, and we get randy and possess an innate desire to screw and get screwed as well. Stop protecting us from ourselves. We're independent agents and not children, and if you frame us as children in need of protection, you have no business pursuing a romantic entanglement with us. If you've ever been ditched in favor of a bad boy, it's because we want to do the deed without judgment and shame, which is a typical, healthy desire for men and women above the age of 12 or so. Nice is the absolute bare minimum you have to be. Self-depreciation isn't cute. If you say things like, "Oh, I'm such a loser," or "No girl is ever going to date me," even in a jokey way, it will not elicit any positive feelings from the person you said it to. It's like a woman saying, "Oh, I'm so fat." Similarly, if you view yourself as a lonely, forever virgin, or the guy who girls just love to friend zone, then it's going to come across pretty obviously to women, and that isn't attractive. Literally nowhere is it written in the stars that anyone has to like you, let alone want to date you. Nobody is contractually obligated to think positive things about you. You have to be a likable person to get people to like you. Sometimes it takes more work for certain people, but if you don't do the work, people don't like you. I don't not like you because you're nice. I love nice guys. But nice guys are usually the ones who don't have to constantly proclaim how nice they are. Wait a minute. You mean I can't fake every aspect of my personality and then be upset when she won't sleep with me? Shocking. Nice guys tend to put women up on a pedestal. Don't do that. I don't want to be worshipped and have my butt kissed, and I don't want to have to try and live up to the idealized version you have of me in your mind. I just want to be treated like a regular human being. If you have to say that you meet the bare minimum, you probably don't, and even meeting the bare minimum doesn't entitle you to doing the deed. It reminds me a little bit of an ad I saw for a house when I was looking to rent. The features it listed included windows and a full kitchen, which are indeed things I expect a house to have. Went to look at the house and indeed meets some of the basic requirements for human habitation, was the absolute best you could say for it. You're not nice and nobody owes you bedroom favors. Women don't like jerks, they like non-socially inept, non-self-congratulating, self-assured, attractive guys. That's it. If you don't fall into at least one of those categories, that has everything to do with your personal shortcomings and nothing to do with the woman you fancy being a B-word. In short, get over yourselves. No one owes you anything, especially in a world where you can get all the bedroom stuff you want for a fee. If you need to do the deed, either get a working girl or get a better personality. If I'm talking to you and seem interested in what you have to say, I probably am. But that in no way means that I'm necessarily interested in dating you or doing the deed with you, because those aren't mutually exclusive items. Talking to you like a person in no way means I'm leading you on, because talking does not equal flirting. Along similar lines, if you act like you want to be a friend, then that's what I'm going to take you as. Don't get angry or cry friend zone when you're treated as my friend and my friend only, because how else was I supposed to interpret your behavior? Expecting anything else is either lying to yourself or to me, neither of which are particularly endearing. Be straightforward with what you want, or don't be surprised when you don't get your secret desired result. Finally, it's a really crappy feeling to find out that someone you thought was a friend was only there to try and get in your pants. You feel devalued and stupid because you've been lied to and betrayed by someone you trust. Don't be that guy, especially if it's to someone you supposedly care about. Housekeepers working for motels, hotels, resorts, or cruise ships. What is the most what the fudge weird or awkward situation that you've stumbled into at work? I worked at this one hotel and a guy bought in a mini propane grill and started grilling chicken in his room. We found out when the whole hall started to smell delicious. Unfortunately, we did have to make him stop. I was the night manager and housekeeping told me there was blood on the walls. I went to the room and, oh my god, the girl was shooting something up and obviously the blood had sprayed everywhere. She tried to extend her stay. Turns out she was just a really crafty working girl. She'd have the first John pay her room through Expedia, use it all night, and then use the money to stay again. She was permabanned after the blood though. I worked with a woman who was the head of housekeeping for a large hotel in the area who told me this story. There was this woman and her daughter who were local but checked into the hotel for a few days. One of the housekeepers came in to service the room one morning while the mum was outside by the pool. The housekeeper walked in and found the girl in bed with blood everywhere. Turns out the girl came to town to have an operation to not have the baby, and mum needed to hide it from dad. The girl started hemorrhaging in her sleep while mum was already outside the room, and the housekeeper actually found her in time to save her life. The housekeeper was too distraught after all was said and done to clean the room. I can't remember if she quit or not. Another housekeeper was brought in to finish. My mum was a hotel general manager and I basically grew up in hotels. The worst was a man who strung himself up in his hotel room on Christmas Eve. He had driven through the night to see his kids for Christmas and his ex wouldn't let him see them. So he went back to his hotel room, set up a rope, and decided he didn't want to be alive anymore. My mum is still traumatized over finding that body. After that, she organized a party in the hotel lobby for every Christmas Eve and always invited all of the guests to try and get people out of their rooms and lift their spirits if they were spending Christmas in the hotel. Rough time of year for a lot of people. Your mum sounds like an absolute peach though. Says a lot that instead of just battening down the hatches, she tries to use her experience to bring people out of what can be a very hard holiday for lonely people. I have a few, I guess. My favorite was when I wasn't working, I actually just got off my shift, when a large wedding party came back late at night absolutely trashed and eventually they all went into their rooms. A while later, the current desk person got a call to the 4th floor immediately. Turns out one woman's boyfriend locked her drunk butt out of the room, completely undressed. Not one to complain, she decided to sleep it off on the couches we put up in the elevator areas on each floor. Still undressed. My coworker went and put a blanket on her, and she woke up and said she was going to sue. She peed on the couch and then threw up on it, and eventually we got her back into her room. The next morning, she was so embarrassed she ran past the front desk to leave. We had an undressed drunk guy in the hall a couple of months ago. Couldn't find his room, so he was knocking on doors, waking up random guests, thinking their rooms were his. Completely shameless, though. Checked out in the morning at the front desk, acting like nothing had happened. He was a business traveler, too. The housekeeping staff at the hotel I used to work at would put all the adult toys they found in a box. It was a tradition to wrap the box and give it to our female boss at the Christmas party. People leave behind their bedroom equipment? That stuff's not cheap. Yeah, some people leave behind some very expensive toys, but when it comes to that, they usually come and get them. I once witnessed a woman blaming the reception staff for her husband catching a taxi to the airport without her. I have no idea if they'd been arguing. It's not the place of staff to pry. I used to work in a park with facilities for the campers that had to be cleaned every morning. One morning, the janitor, we'll call him Jose, came into work and started by cleaning the bathrooms. When he came to the men's bathroom, a ranger saw him go in, come back out, put on a hazmat suit and go back in. This actually wasn't as abnormal as you'd think, considering we get a lot of weirdos doing turd art on the walls. Anyway, Jose finishes up, heads over to the next set of campsites. Later that day, some campers find a body in the woods right behind the bathroom. Sure enough, some guy had been unalived in the bathroom. The police were not happy with Jose. Former hotel worker here, please check under your mattress if you stay in a hotel, because the odds are the housekeepers aren't bothering to lift up the mattress like they should. After you've lifted said mattress, go ahead and enjoy the copious amounts of adult magazines that are left there for you. Seriously, people leave adult magazines and DVDs under those mattresses all the time. Quite often, it's a regular guest who requests the same room, and it's just their stash because they know the small, Nepalese housekeeper won't lift the mattress even a little bit. Okay, update. Apparently some of you are taking the enjoy the copious amounts of free adult material as a literal statement. It was meant to be sarcastic, as at least for myself anyway, handling some stranger's random magazines for my own personal pleasure just seems unappealing. Oh, my top 3 were, in order, painted landscapes across 3 of the 4 walls, painted in number 2. Surprisingly talented. Used Johnnies placed over every light bulb in the room. I didn't actually discover until the rubber prophylactic started to burn. And finally, I had an employee give out the wrong keys to a room. The parents gave the keys to their small children, they ran ahead and opened the door, and inside was a couple performing what we shall simply say were very high-end costumed acrobatics, complete with ball gag and riding crop. I'm sure this is way worse at the low-end hotels, but I managed a Marriott and the standards are high, so some adult material under the mattress was one of a few really bad things we'd find. Every now and then, a syringe would be found, but thank goodness that was housekeeping doing their job and not a guest finding it. When I was younger, I worked night reception in a really crappy run-down hotel. I took over the night shift from the afternoon shift and was given my handover. As per usual on the weekends, we had our late checkouts and wake-up calls for airport transfers. Come 2:45 a.m., I called the guests in room 3405, but I got no answer. Tried again a few more times and still nothing. Now, as I'd mentioned, this being such a crummy, -3-star, rat-infested hotel from hell, we had a total staff of 1. Me. So off I went, up 3 floors with the master key to fetch Mr. Collins. I knocked 3 times and got no answer, so I went in. What I saw next will haunt me forever. Across the room in the double-doored fake mahogany closet was Mr. Collins, completely undressed in a standing position, knees bent, shoulders slumped on the inside of the closet, with a belt attached around his neck, buckle side attached to the closet rail. Eyes closed and a great big smile on his face. Dead as a dodo. So, first aid training kicked in. I knew it was for nothing. The guy was as cold as a well-digger's butthole. Called the ambulance and started CPR, but it was obvious the guy wasn't coming back. Paramedics took over, but he was pronounced dead straight away. Working in the hospitality industry, you somewhat prepare yourself for grannies passing away in the middle of the night and the odd heart attack here and there, but never that sort of thing. In short, Guy unalived himself while tickling his pickle with his belt around his neck. Couldn't be saved. One of my co-workers was vacationing in Mexico and decided buying green herb was a good idea, and leaving said herb in a backpack in his hotel room. When they returned to their room, the cops were rushing in and out of there. He began to panic because he was sure he had got busted for substance possession and that he was headed for a Mexican jail. The cops asked if this was his room and rushed them in. They told the guys to pack up and that they were getting a new room. The room was dark, so my friend opened the blinds. Someone had jumped from their balcony and landed on theirs, thus exploding all over the glass door. That's a very complicated and weird sort of relief, I imagine, and one that would probably make you feel very guilty in the days to come afterwards. I bet the guy rushed that green herb out of there as quickly as possible. No way that it didn't smell. I work as a housekeeper at a casino during the party hours, and I've been there for a while. I have so many stories to share from how crazy it is there, it's pretty hard to believe the crap I've seen. One in particular, I got called to go close down a restroom because a young woman was having a medical emergency right there. I also had an older gentleman ask me if I had a boyfriend while I was cleaning the restroom and we were alone, and he grabbed me and kissed me. He was later escorted out with his wife. I'm a dude, by the way. I've also been attacked by a pantsless man, seen women go number 2 on the floor in front of me, and a nice intoxicated man deciding it would be funny to pee on people on the balcony below. I've been here for a while and I have so many stories from that crazy place. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon because it's just so interesting. Although, as a housekeeping note for any of my customers, please stop standing so far away from the urinal. You will literally leave a puddle of number 1 and then I have 50 people all doing it every minute. You guys are killing me. Also, a good amount of people who crap on the ceiling. It amazes me the projectile range that these people have. Not a big thing, but something I'll always remember. I worked as a housekeeper in a 4-star hotel. It was quite an expensive place, and we often had rich guests from the Middle East. This will become relevant. The hotel, of course, had a spa area, and it was my duty to close this area at about 10 p.m., meaning to shoo the last guests out of the pool and sauna, clean everything, and close it down. One time I went to see if there were any guests still in the sauna, and when I opened the door there was a woman and man, I assume they were husband and wife, sitting inside. He was undressed, only with a towel around his waist, and she was fully veiled, wearing a head-to-toe chador inside a 90-degree sauna. Needless to say, I was surprised. I don't care about religious clothing rules, to each his own, I guess, but sitting inside a sauna fully veiled surely made me raise my eyebrows a bit. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Never worked at a hotel, but I delivered pizzas to them. This one time, this guy orders a pizza in the most run-down hotel in town. I go out there. He says, "Come on in." I usually will not go inside places, but for whatever reason, I took one step in. There's a girl sitting in a haze on the bed, like non-responsive staring, wearing only her undies. I got my money and left, not saying anything. I got halfway to the car and the guy leans out and says, "Hey," and gestures for me to come back. I'm a little nervous at this point as he's hanging out of his door. He could have a piece in his other hand for all I know, and he only approached halfway. He comes all the way out with more money, thankfully not a weapon of his own, and he says, "Hey, have a little extra tip. That working girl gave me a discount when she saw the size of my eggplant," with a big old smile on his face. I'm not sure if the discount was because it was big or small, to be honest. Now, I know full well that I shouldn't have touched this nasty, substanced-out working girl and sleazy dude's money, but of course I did. Oh, and another time I delivered to the Holiday Inn Express, the nice hotel in town, and my receipt said room 202. I knocked, they opened the door, paid for the pizza, and all, no problem. Got a decent tip out of it. I got back to the shop and my boss says, "Where the hell have you been? 212 just called and said you didn't deliver." Now, I'm confused because I just delivered to 202 as my receipt says. Turns out my manager wrote the room number down wrong. I took the pizza to the wrong guy and he just paid for it. So I called 212 and apologized and explained the mix-up. I make his pizza and run it out to him. When I get there, he tells me that management has been involved because he called 202 and said, "Hey, I think you got my pizza," and 202 said something to the effect of, "It's my pizza now, and if you want it, you'll have to come and take it from me." Very odd character, that 202. Anyway, I gave him the pizza for free because of the problem. He felt bad for me and gave me a $20 tip. So basically, the screw-up got me a funny story and a great tip. I worked as a night auditor for a small-town chain hotel in the early 1990s. One night, a nicely dressed businessman checked in on my shift. He came back to the desk a few minutes later and rented a few movies. We had VCRs in the rooms back then. One of the movies was The Hunt for Red October. It had just come out on video. The evening went pretty uneventful, but the next night when I came to work, I received the news. Sometime during my shift, he had deleted part of his own head with a deagle while in his bed. No one heard or saw this happen, and he was found by a maid at about 1 p.m. the next day, and he had bled out. None of the maids would clean up the mess. I went into the room and could see the huge pool of viscera on the bed and floor. It took them over a week to clean the room. It smelled terrible. As it turned out, the blood leaked under the floor and under the bed in the adjoining room that we'd still rented out, without knowing there was coagulated blood on the floor. We just kept airing the room out and spraying a lot of air freshener. To this day, I have never seen The Hunt for Red October. I worked for a small golf resort for several years, and this story still burns a hole in my brain every time I tell it. So we have these small hotel rooms that contain 2 beds and a bathroom. I serviced, like fresh towels and stuff, for 3 days and everything was normal. On checkout day, 6 men checked out. I saw them meet up with their wives and girlfriends who weren't staying with them at the front desk as I was clocking in. I walked into the unit after they'd left and there was doo-doo and blood smeared everywhere. The walls, the sheets, the shower, and even the TV. There were about 20 rubbers laying out on the heater attached to the wall. As I was removing the sheets to throw them away, 2 butt toys with rubbers still on them flopped out onto the floor and one started vibrating. It had to be the most disturbing mess I had to clean up. And when I notified the front desk manager, he refused to bill them for leaving such a huge mess to clean up and said, "This is a place where people come to relax. If they want to let loose, then so be it." I was so mad. Which situation should I share? Alright, so a few girls and myself teamed up and cleaned these cottages for a state park. I usually clean bathrooms because the girls don't wanna, and I'd rather do it because screw it, you can just bleach everything and not have to worry about if crap in the kitchen is missing. Anyway, cleaning the bathroom when I heard my co-workers gag and tell me to come to the bedroom. I walk in and instantly smell something more foul than a chicken house. I look at the bed and there is a blood stain almost 4 feet wide at crotch level, center of the bed. Oh boy, and no body anywhere to be seen. I have a feeling that this may be one of the more extreme examples of one of our patients who tripped and fell from the many medical videos we've done on this channel. I hope that the person was okay and that they actually went to get the medical help they clearly needed. I work at a 7-story hotel in Illinois, and one night a man tried to climb out of a 7th-story window to the roof, a real daredevil. He fell to his death, and the scene that followed was one of the most what the fudge moments of my life, and really changed my perception of people in general. It turned out that while climbing out of the window, his girlfriend tickled him, causing him to fall. Later, when outside, she screamed that over and over, "I didn't mean to make him fall, I was only tickling him." I thought that she had just died crying. In their panic, the remaining 4 people in the room took the elevator to the basement instead of the ground floor and proceeded to punch holes in the wall because they were so laced out on substances that they couldn't find their way out. One got out, but the rest were down there for over an hour. When the woman finally got outside where I headed after calling the cops, she literally clawed at me and begged me to do CPR in spite of the geyser of blood coming out of this man's mouth. He was obviously done. It was a confusing and chaotic night after that. I was the manager on duty, so I was the one who let the police into the room. I watched the police chaplain gather up all of the substances and paraphernalia into a shopping bag, and he did a thorough search as well. There was so much stuff, more substances than I've ever seen before or since. It took hours to clean everything up, and the last thing to happen was the fire department hosing the red stuff away. What was so what the frick that changed my view on people? The official police report stated that substances were suspected to play a role, but none were found in the room. It was just stated that the man fancied himself a daredevil, and others in the room didn't notice he was gone for several minutes. All total lies. I'll never believe another police report as long as I live. I'll never believe another news story, even a small one. What happened and what was reported was so different, I wondered if something had happened at another hotel on the same night. So not a funny story, but one of the most what the frick nights of my life. I was never even interviewed by the police other than giving them the information that I'd been given at check-in, and no, I was never interviewed by a reporter. I even called the paper a few days later and asked if they were interested in what really happened. They were sort of, meh, and never got back to me. What a disconnect from reality. This was just a small incident in a huge city, and now when I see major stories on major news sites, I can't help but think of the misinformation that must increase exponentially. I'm a supervisor at a hotel. 2 weeks ago, I got a call in the middle of the night from one of the bellmen telling me he needed help. I threw on some clothes and ran over, I live across the street, to find a drunk guy passed out in one of the lobby bathroom stalls amongst the single most foul odor I've ever smelled. I couldn't remember his room or who he was with. Turns out he'd decided to go number 2 in the hallway and then fell in it, smearing it all over himself and the floor. It ended with me having to call the cops and him calling me mean. That was actually the second time a drunk guy relieved himself of his solids in our hallway. Also, a housekeeper once found a working girl's menu of the services she performed, as well as a bag full of butt toys. There's an Indian casino near me that was originally a casino. They then built a hotel. As a soft opening, they invited tribe members and their families to stay for the weekend, just to work out any problems before they opened to the public. As it turns out, they had to re-renovate an entire floor of the hotel because they found that 15 out of the 23 rooms in one of the floors turned into a makeshift crystal lab over these 2 days. All the people that stayed in these rooms were family members of the people that worked at the casino, and it was swept under the rug and nothing ever came of it. I did maintenance for a hotel for a few months. The owner and his wife were both involved in the business. I walked into a room where the curtain rod was torn down. In there was the owner and our 18-year-old front desk worker. He gave me $2,000 in cash to not tell his wife. My brother worked in a bigger hotel in the center of Amsterdam. He was a minibar filler for the rooms, so they normally knock about 3 times before going in. He had one room, no answer, so he went inside to start filling up the minibar. As he goes in, he sees a small black case in the middle of the room. A second later, a skinny, undressed guy pops up from behind the wall, holding an adult toy and stuffing euros into my brother's hand. At this point, my brother sees the money and plays along for the moment. The guy opens the briefcase and pulls out a gigantic toy from it and starts inserting this massive thing into his now pulsing behind. My brother stands there in slight awe as the guy tells him to wait and stuffs more money into his hand. This is all happening very quickly. Next thing my brother knows, he's holding a lot of money now. The guy has placed himself on a small stool and is begging my brother to start whacking him on the butt with one of those table tennis bats from Heck, black leather with metal pins on it. My brother sees the money again, starts smacking the guy on the butt like 3 or 4 times before hitting him so hard he falls off the stool. My brother leaves with the money, and the guy is still begging for more. Brother tells management, and the guy is banned from the hotel. I've never laughed as hard as I did hearing the story. He made a lot of money, but still kind of felt like he had turned into a rent boy. When is it smart to pretend to be stupid? There was this Chinese restaurant near where I live. Years and years ago, a guy came in and handed the greeter a note that said, "I have a weapon, give me your money." The woman examined the note and then handed it back to the man, shaking her head. "You want food? What do you want to eat?" The man began to quietly explain that he had a piece. "Gum? What gum? We don't sell gum. You want chicken?" While she was busy with this guy, one of the chefs in the back caught on to what was going on and called the cops. Of course, the greeter spoke perfect English. It can be easier to pretend to be dumb if you know a lot about a topic, and someone is trying to give you poor advice on that topic, and you don't really feel like spending the next 30 minutes trying to make them understand the error of their ways. When your family asks you to fix their computer, The first time you do it, every problem they have down the road is going to be on you. My mum has called me from 300 miles away to have me fix some computer issues of hers. I end up having to remotely access her computer with Join Me, and it's a pain. I have to say, click on the orange button. I don't see it. It's right in the middle of the homepage. It says About. Should I click on About? No. We provide a variety of services. No, go back, and have offices in 15 countries, including… Just avoiding telling them you know anything works even better if, like the narrator, you have a brother who knows nearly as much or slightly less about computers, but is a nicer person who isn't a liar like you are. Maybe this tactic can sacrifice him to the parents and save your sanity. I heard a story about a Chinese-Australian kid getting busted for not having a train ticket. When the inspector confronted him, he responded in this very heavy, "What? I no understand," ignorant Asian migrant accent. Eventually, the inspector gives up and just tells him the rules and to have a ticket next time. After the inspector leaves, the kid turns to his mates and says in a perfect Aussie accent, "Frick, I love being Asian." My father had this habit that my mother has constantly reminded me of since he died. No matter how well-versed he was on a subject, he always let the other person do the talking first, then would ask them questions. Not only was he able to learn more, but it naturally made him entertain opinions contrary to his own, making him a much more open and humble person. If the person didn't know what they were talking about, the discussion didn't descend into an argument, they'd just slowly realize they were talking to someone much more informed, based solely on the questions he was asking, which in turn made them a lot more open to receiving an alternate opinion as well. There was this story that Andy Rooney told about a reporter from Stars and Stripes. He said the reporter would act as dumb as a rock when interviewing someone, and the person being interviewed would way over-explain the answers trying to help the reporter understand. The reporter was then able to write stories with greater details and better descriptions. Rooney said one time a pilot was interviewed by this reporter, and after the reporter left, the pilot told Rooney, "That man was so dumb I practically had to explain what an airplane was." Acting dumb is a great tactic when you need someone with a fragile ego to cooperate. When the cops show up at a house party, "Who lives here?" "I don't know." "Who broke this bottle in the street?" "Huh, no idea." "Where are the substances?" "Substances? What substances?" "Who drives the 2005 Camry out front?" "Beats me." I feel like the stupid act can be useful if you intentionally lower someone's expectations of you, then you have more options available to you later, depending on the situation, of course. Slightly related, isn't there an old proverb that's like, "It's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open it and remove all doubt"? I do this all the time. Mouth breathe, 1,000-yard stare. It really cuts down on people wanting me to do things for them. In many negotiations, the ignorant person will come out ahead. Stupid questions take time and can wear an adversary down. I've asked a car salesman, "How much do I save if I take out the sunroof because I don't want it?" Of course, he thought I was an idiot, but the next thing you know, the value of the sunroof is being deducted from the price. On a larger scale, the Russians have historically used this tactic when negotiating things like treaties. They've often pulled the language card. Their interpreters are not understanding what you're saying, and they need every line explained over and over. Stupidity wears people down, and they'll give you what you want just to get rid of you. When I was in college, I got a job at Sam's, and they told me I was in electronics because I knew computers. Later, my manager chewed me out for not zoning everywhere on my side of the store. Pretty soon, I lost all of my computer knowledge and became a drooling idiot that just put boxes on shelves. If you get a job in retail, any extra skill you have is just a liability without extra compensation, and you'll get used for it. If you're developing a relationship with someone and they start talking about a subject you're well-versed in, just let them explain it, ask questions, and it'll naturally make your relationship progress. When you play with kids, you should let them show you things that you never knew before. I have a teacher who tells the story of his green herb-using friend from high school. He went to the same school I'm at now, which is a private Catholic school. They take substances pretty seriously and they expel students over them. So this buddy of mine, let's call him John, had started selling green herb. and the administration caught on. The dean of students at the time checked this guy's locker and found a ton of Mary J in it. He was called in the next day and told, "I know you have that stuff in your locker because I already checked. Just tell me the names of who you sold it to and I'll lighten the punishment." Well, he tells the dean a list of 3 or 4 guys that were all caught already and waiting outside. He says that's the list as he remembers it. It's not, he sold it to a lot of people. The dean sends him on his way and deals with the rest of the kids. Later that day, this one guy I know is called in because him and the dealer are friends. This guy is in a National Honors Society and works on the newspaper, 4.0 GPA, overall a good kid. The dean thought that he wouldn't lie and would rat out everyone who bought. The dean was wrong. This guy gets to the dean's office, walks in and sits down. The dean says, "Look, I busted John for possession of green herb and I know you have a—" My friend interrupts him. Whoa. John had green herb? Don't do this, Chad. No, you sure you got the right John? I'm sure. I just had no idea. I mean, we've been friends for years and he's never shown any interest in that stuff. Come on, Chad. No, can I just talk to him about this? I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Chad, get the frick out of my office. So the moral of the story is to always deny or feign ignorance. It's a tactic that has worked for the narrator on many occasions. Living in a foreign land has gotten me out of trouble a number of times because I'm just a dumb foreigner. Then I listen to them talking about how dumb I am in my second language and they move on. I thank my lucky stars and wipe off the cold sweat. When talking to people who like to argue just for the sake of it, no matter how well-versed your views are, they'll find some stupid ways to crap all over them. Just shut up, pretend you don't know anything, and take the wind out of their sails. When your former employer is getting audited by the IRS and you're just a cashier at the car wash, copy Skylar White and play the dumb bimbo or medicated loser. Jury duty. They sent me home after asking me some questions. They asked me if I knew what something meant, and I stayed quiet for a couple of minutes until they explained it like I was 5, and I still told them I didn't understand. It's nearly always best to play dumb. I've come to find if you act like you don't know, most people will tell you what they know. If you do this long enough, you should acquire all the world's info. Seriously though, play dumb until you can't anymore, and if you're ever called on it, I usually just keep playing dumb and saying something like, "Oh, well, I wasn't sure if that was actually right or not. Now we know." When someone is obviously trying to exploit you, there's nothing more fun than pretending to be computer illiterate when you get one of those fake tech support calls. You know the ones, heavy Indian accent claiming to be from Microsoft, and see how long you can keep them on the line before they hang up. 1975 Cambodia. They executed anyone seen as being too intelligent. Anything IT related unless it's your job. I was the unofficial IT for my department until a woman brought in her laptop from home and left it on my desk to fix. I told her that was very inappropriate and that I can't take the liability of fixing her home computer. She slammed the door and cursed me out, and it was the only time I've yelled at a coworker, "You will never slam a door on me again." She said, "Get the frick back to your office and sit down. You will never curse at me again, and by God you'd better start acting your age at work, or at least act my age," I said as a 27-year-old reading the riot act to this 55-year-old woman. Our boss apologized on her behalf, but the woman didn't get reprimanded at all, and eventually I left for another project. Now I just pretend to be dumb. But magically, the printer and scanner and shared files and secure file transfers always work for me, so I think my coworkers are catching on. In eastern Ukraine, a friend and I got stopped by some thug on the street who was threatening us and implying that he was going to take our money. We pretended to not know Ukrainian. It ended up going fine. So I guess in that moment it was smart to pretend to be stupid. Similar thing happened to me on the streets of DC. Some guys came up to me and asked for my money and cell phone, but I'd just gotten out of a loud concert so I couldn't hear them at first. I just nodded and laughed and kept walking. They followed for a moment, but then I got to an area with more people and they melted away. People underestimate you, then you plan your moves without them even knowing that you could. When meeting your girlfriend's parents and play What's a Potato? When you're trying to catch someone in a lie. When you know all of the details but you just want to see them weave a tapestry of bullcrap. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. In a deposition, the less you say, the better. Also, I don't know and I don't remember are perfectly acceptable answers. You can play dumb in basic training for the armed forces. It saves you trouble, but it also saves you promotions. When you regularly find yourself in situations where you have to interact with stupid people for long stretches of time. I interact with uneducated blue-collar men in their 50s and 60s every day. Being too smart around them is a surefire way to marginalize yourself. When someone says, "I'm gonna shoot you if you're smart." When appearing too smart would trigger or offend people who you don't want to trigger or offend. It can be a friend or a cop pulling you over. When you're in a bar with a bunch of drunk, violent rednecks. I'm a recent graduate with a science degree and I'm applying for lots of jobs. I have my professional CV for career jobs, and then I have my slightly crappier, shorter CV for applying to dead-end jobs. My logic is that a company doesn't want to employ a recent science graduate in a customer service role if they know the employee will jump ship as soon as a career opportunity comes along, so I dumb myself down. Damn, the narrator wishes he'd made this move 2 years ago, was desperate and looking for literally anything, even minimum wage retail. Got no callbacks. But yeah, they'd probably wonder why someone with all of my adult job experience wouldn't leave them for something better as soon as the opportunity presented itself. And they'd be right. Play dumb when questioned by the Inquisition. Play dumb when you're a prisoner of war. See Doug Hegdahl. When you find a coworker's mistake at work, if you tell them that it's wrong, people automatically get defensive. If you say you don't understand why they did something the way they did, they'll find the mistake themselves. Also, if there's no mistake, it won't blow up in your face. Presumably, when you're arguing with a person who doesn't know much about the subject but just tries to look clever. Pretend to be dumb and ask them questions, from simpler to more difficult ones, and they'll eventually show their lack of knowledge, which you can exploit. That's what I heard works, at least some ancient Greek philosopher used this, I think. However, I'm too stupid to use it myself. When you happen upon a hostage situation, if you pretend to be mentally challenged, it's possible you'll be able to catch the dude off guard. Any time where you won't be paid for it, but you'll be expected to keep doing it once you show that you can. As a woman, I completely pretend to know nothing about technology or money when a salesman comes to the door. Sadly, my husband takes care of that and is out of town for a month is an easier way to get rid of them than I don't want it. When you encounter a know-it-all neckbeard kind of person, it's more entertaining to play dumb and listen to their wealth of knowledge, even if you know they're full of crap. It isn't worth starting an argument or hurting feelings, most of the time. Basic training. When the drill instructor says, "Anyone got a driver's license?" and all these hands go up. Perfect. You, and you. Clean the johns. If you hear, "Does anyone have?" it's a trap. Be as stupid as possible and keep your mouth shut. Maybe not stupid, but ignorant. When my mum or fiancé shows me some video or asks me about something I've seen or already read about, it's usually better just to play along. Literally all the time, showing any capability at anything other than what's required of you is a great way to be exploited. I love when hard work is rewarded with more work. Everything's done. Go home early? Nope. Get an extra break? Nope. Extra pay? Don't be stupid. Promotion? Nope, you're too good at this work and we can't afford to lose that. Stay exactly where you are and have another shoveling of this lovely, delicious work. Maybe we'll fire someone to save some money and get you to do their job as well. Group work if you know exactly how to do everything that the group needs to do. When starting a new job, it varies from job to job, but generally speaking, it takes time to learn the ropes. As soon as you act like you know what's going on, people will stop helping you and begin to expect more of you. When I was younger, my tendency was to dive in headfirst with a gung-ho attitude. "Oh, let me do it, I can handle it." I'm a bit more reserved these days. Unless I know that I can knock it out of the park, I don't step up. When salespeople come to the door or phone you, "Oh, I'm so sorry, my husband deals with all of this kind of thing. I don't understand. It's all so confusing." I don't have a husband. When negotiating for something. When the judge asks you why you stole all of the money. When someone wants help with their assignment and you know the right answers. When Pol Pot starts asking questions. You'd also do well to have good eyesight. If you pretend to be an idiot or ignorant, you can sometimes change the direction of the situation. For example, if a guy tells you to give him your money, say, sure, take out your wallet, hand him a few bucks, and tell him God bless, and then just walk away. When going through TSA in an airport. I'm autistic, though obviously high-functioning enough to be on the internet and to fly in an aircraft by myself, but airports in general make the autism a lot worse, and render me non-verbal, so I have to type everything on a phone and show it to people. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've just been waved through the TSA line without anything, and then given a direct ride to my gate or something like that. I guess it's not completely pretending because it is true to a point, but typing out, "I have autism, please be patient" on a phone and sticking it in a TSA agent's face seems to translate to, "I'm mentally challenged and no possible threat. Let me pass without any security measures." So the narrator was of two minds about putting this piece of advice on the internet, but it is interesting and it does pertain to the topic, so any potential villains, please don't do this. Thank you. When you're a woman and a guy likes you and is going to buy you something. All the time, to be honest. Any hearsay or opinions or money matters between multiple family members. Play dumb and walk away. In prison or among criminals. Not a good idea to stand out being seen as overly intellectual. When you want someone to think they're smarter than you. I shamelessly played dumb as a white girl who found myself in a redneck bar. When the locals started getting rowdy and saying stupid crap, I got the frick out as quickly, gracefully, and low-key as I could before I outed myself as having a brain. When some wise guy from Jersey asks you what you saw as he lets you out of the trunk. George W. Bush did it for 8 years and became president off that facade. Pretty darn smart of him because it worked. People think he's legitimately stupid. When your country's despot leader is hunting down intellectuals. When you work for a government entity, being proactive here just gets you in trouble. Whenever traveling overseas and you get into trouble. As an American, I often played the "I'm an ignorant American, I didn't know I needed a ticket to ride the train." I got out of so many fines this way. Don't judge me, I was in school and I had very little money. When third world police are trying to shake you down for no reason. When you got caught doing something you're not supposed to, it's easier to say, "Sorry, I didn't know," than "I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway." When smart people are getting purged. I act stupid by default. No point in showing your cards, right? People expect less of you. They aren't intimidated by you and therefore they can feel more open with you. At a poker table, I sat down being the only female in the room and pretended not to know a few things. It was digital poker where you play and bet against others, but the dealer is just the computer. Asked, "How do I see my cards?" You had to cup your hands over them on the table and had trouble setting up the login. Everyone saw me as easy prey. I made $550 that day. Your first day in prison. Mouth shut, ears, eyes wide open. It's almost always smart to pretend to be stupid. Smart people are almost universally detested. If you really are smart, you don't want to let the other monkeys catch wind of it until you have an escape plan. When a cute girl asks about your educational background. My husband knows how to fix the cars, so I see no point in me retaining that knowledge. I know the basics in case something happens and I'm alone, but I'll never let him know that and I'll never want to take a lesson from him again. When you're being interrogated by the police, until you're represented by a lawyer, say nothing. Remain completely mute and ignorant of any information they try to pry out of you, save your name and the desire for representation. When you realize you're by far the smartest in a group of people. When the IRS audits your tax return and asks if you realized that the deductions you listed were not legitimate. Counting cards in a casino. When a child tells you all about something you already know. Be engaged, show them that you're listening, encourage them when they falter. Plus, sometimes it's just refreshing to see things with a child's eyes. If you can't make time then and there, always be willing to revisit. When your joke about not knowing what a potato is goes wrong. When someone makes an overtly racist, sexist, or homophobic joke or comment, act like you just don't get it and get them to explain it over and over, highlighting their own bigotry and stupidity. When you're locked in a room with 5 other people and the last one alive that solves a puzzle gets to go free, you want everyone to want you to be the last one they have to go up against to live. What's the most stupid rule you've been expected to abide by? In my sophomore year of high school, our old principal got a promotion to the district office. He was replaced by someone who had literally just moved to the area and knew next to nothing of the well-established culture of our small town. After a few weeks, he noticed a problem around the campus. He saw many people wearing purple and gold in copious amounts and in ridiculous ways every Friday, and he was sure it had to be related to gang involvement. Rather than ask anyone about it, he called an emergency assembly in which he lectured us about the seriousness of the issue. He informed us that from that point on, if anyone were to wear either of these colors at school, they'd be put in detention for the remainder of the day, and their parent or guardian would have to come and pick them up. People laughed and rebelled, wearing more purple and gold on more days, and the detention room was overflowing almost every day. 2 months later, he found out that purple and gold were our school colors. People were dressing up like that on Fridays to show support and pride for whatever sports team had a game that day, as was the tradition of our town for the past 60 years. To show how stupid he felt, he called another emergency assembly to apologize, to which he wore a purple and gold clown suit and a dunce cap. In 5th grade, my friend and I were walking through the mostly empty school to get to our bus at the end of the day. A teacher was walking in the opposite direction towards us and yelled at us to walk in a line. So we made a line, just the 2 of us, and walked like that to our bus. I went to a semi-boarding high school, about 10% of the students boarded, and new dorms were constructed while I was there. We had a big meeting and the principal said, "No mixed dorm rooms, we don't want anyone doing the deed." That's a bit paraphrased. One of the students stood up and said, "What about the gay kids? They get to do it." So for about a month, the rule was no students of the opposite or same gender in your dorm room with the exception of your roommates. Honestly, given how conservative a lot of boarding schools are, I'm surprised that it actually affected the policy rather than them just brushing off the question. Now, I'm curious, are there hyper-liberal boarding schools? What does that even look like? I'm an EMS helicopter pilot. I fly with night vision goggles. Problem: the Federal Air Association rules for using night vision goggles state that the aircraft must also be equipped with a working radar altimeter. So if I'm flying over the Sierra Nevada mountains on a pitch-black night and the radar altimeter fails, legally I have to take the night vision goggles off. Elementary school in Canada. We were not allowed to form circles. During recess and such, as you get older, you kind of get into that whole, "Oh, look at me, I'm getting older and cooler and I just stand around and talk with people instead of messing around in the snow," kind of thing. And apparently us forming circles was a safety hazard because supervising teachers couldn't see anything going on in the middle of the circle. I mean, God forbid, what if we were making a circle inside that circle? I once took a part-time job from a temp agency at Toys R Us distribution warehouse, where my job was to cut open boxes, place them on a pallet and put the pallet in the bottom of the stacks, which are large shelves. We were all just extra people they needed for the extra Christmas workload. I met all kinds of interesting people, including an elderly husband and wife who were farmers trying to make ends meet. Well, anyways, the one person in charge of us was an absolute C-word. She was a permanent Toys R Us employee. We were treated like crap. Oftentimes, we didn't have any boxes to cut open and were made to stand still at our tables. Large but low tables with 4 people to stand around. When standing here, we had to do nothing. If we moved around, or heaven forbid if we sat down on the table, we were screamed at. I guess they thought if we were going to be paid for doing nothing that we should suffer for it. Like standing in one spot for up to 4 hours straight, which would absolutely kill my back. I've run into a lot of jobs where the rules seem to be just made to punish employees. Oftentimes because of what some bad employee did in the past, and now all future employees have to pay for it. I worked at a Toys R Us store for Christmas as extra help stacking the empty shelves overnight. We had a rule that if there was nothing to do, you'd go to the warehouse in the back and drive around like a maniac in those little electric toy cars. I don't think this was official policy, though. At a previous job, I was instructed not to keep any document or email for longer than 6 months, and that my computer would be audited to ensure compliance. This included program source code. I was a programmer. Giving up my nail clippers at airport security. I fly the planes. I assume that it's preventing the highly plausible scenario in which, mid-flight with autopilot enabled, Pilot Paul nips off to the bathroom to do a quick spot of nail clipping. Meanwhile, an awful hijacker who's had the audacity to not check the "I am a hijacker" box on the security sheet sees this pedicure about to take place. As Pilot Paul is about to enter the bathroom and is at his most vulnerable, the terrorist leaps from his seat and wrestles Pilot Paul to the ground, stealing the nail clippers from him. Pilot Paul struggles valiantly to try and reclaim the nail clippers, but, as is taught in all good self-defense schools, when your opponent is armed, it's best to simply run away. Pilot Paul is fatally clipped in the jugular and dies a heroic death on the airplane floor. The hijacker fights his way up to the cockpit and swiftly unlocks the door with the pointy bit used to get dirt from the right corner of the nail there. He overpowers the co-pilot easily with the unfoldable nail file and switches the seatbelt light on. The passengers and crew take their seats and belt up. The hijacker is now in total control. I'm a system admin for a company that had a proposal to do some work for a large bank. They told us we needed to comply with their security procedures for data storage and mentioned the name of the document in an email. When we asked for a copy of the document so we could make sure we were compliant, we were told that we couldn't see it as it was an internal bank document and not allowed to be transmitted outside their network. In short, was told to comply with the security document we weren't allowed to see. I worked at Pizza Hut for a while. We got an order for 5 pepperoni pizzas. So I laid out 5 discs of dough, stretched them all, and then sauced them all. You know, the most efficient way to do it. The manager came over and said I was doing it wrong, that I had to make each pizza start to finish, place it in the oven, and then make the next one. I told him he was an idiot and kept doing it the efficient way. The general manager came in later and totally had my back. Christ, that's a pathetic victory. I have a similar Papa John's story. I had a manager who'd flip his crap if you lined up open boxes on the cutting table in preparation to put the pizzas in them as they were coming out of the oven. Long story short, one day we were slammed and he was chilling in his office, which had a window that could see the pizza cutting table. He was doing nothing, as usual, so I lined up about 4 to 5 boxes and he came flying out of the office and berating me. We exchange words and both end up in the owner's office where we explain our story and I'm visibly upset. I don't take getting yelled at by authority too well. The owner looks him dead square in the eye and says, "If she quits, you're fired." The manager left me the heck alone and let me do my job after that. I worked in daycare. We had classroom ratios. Say, 1 teacher must be in the room for every 5 children there. My new boss wanted us to call her when we needed to go to the bathroom and wait for her to come over and cover us for the time it took us to go pee. Okay, so this doesn't sound so bad, except we'd call her and she'd tell us to hold it, or she'd say that she was busy with something and she'd be there in a second. Then a half hour later, when we were slinking down the hall to the bathroom, she'd yell at us for being in the hall. She also wrote me up for being too loud. In daycare, I was singing songs to infants during circle time and they were all sitting quietly and clapping. She was crazy. Didn't happen to me personally, but my sister is severely mentally and physically handicapped, wheelchair-bound and frequently has health issues or doctor's appointments, which inevitably lead to many missed classes. Despite this, we've gotten countless phone calls and messages on the machine informing us that my sister has earned an in-school suspension for her missed classes. Seems like a great way to get your school sued, or at least in the newspaper, and not for any good reason. My lord, what a merciless bunch of disillusioned teachers must have been in charge there. I wasn't allowed to watch PG-13 or higher movies, or the book, comic, game equivalents until I moved out of my parents' house at age 19. Additionally, I wasn't allowed to have my computer in my room, Not entirely unreasonable. The weird thing about that is that it kept being true after I got married and was just visiting them. If you think that's bad, I have a friend who, at 19, his parents would make him hook up a box to their TV if they want to watch anything over a G rating. This box would monitor the closed captioning, and if it saw a bad word, and we're talking mild language here, such as the common word for doing the deed, it would mute the TV show and show the closed captioning on the screen, but it would replace the bad word. I watched a movie over there once, and only once. Not me, but I went to high school with a guy who had very overprotective, stereotypical Asian parents. He then went to college a 5-hour drive away from his folks and lived at college. So when he was away, for all his parents knew, he could have been doing light snow and going to adult clubs 5 nights a week. But when he came home for holidays, he had to be in before it got dark out, even when he was over 21. When Batman Begins came out, his parents only let him go to see it with me and some friends because we lied to him for his own good, and I said my mom was driving us to the theater. We were all over 21 at this point. In short, friends' parents made him be home before it got dark every night, and only let him go to see a movie when he was 21 because they thought my mom was going with us. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. In schools, if someone tries to fight you and you don't want to, you can't even defend yourself. The rule is if you throw a punch or perform any kind of violent act, you've consented to the fight. Are you a 140-pound freshman about to be killed by a senior? Did you hit them once in self-defense but got sent to the hospital? Well, guess what, kiddo? You've got 5 days out of school suspension. And we also have in our rulebook the penalties for setting off a bomb. Is that necessary? I worked at a zoo and we weren't allowed to use the word evolution. In high school, I left campus after class and got some ice cream. I came back 20 minutes later to meet with my teacher for help on calculus. When I walked into campus, I was stopped by one of the ladies on yard duty who informed me that I'm not allowed to come back on campus after leaving. I explained to her that I was coming back for tutoring, but she didn't care. Long story short, she took me to the admin office and turned me in. They gave her weird looks and told her what I was doing was completely fine. I had to wear an aerial harness to climb a 6-foot ladder. When I was in primary school, about 7 or so, I remember that we weren't permitted to eat Mother Nature lunch bars because they promoted paganism. I ate them every day. Back in high school, our then Dean of Students, a woman who literally carried around a ruler to see if girls' skirts were too short, tried to bring about a rule where girls had to have sleeved dresses at school dances. That rule didn't last long, as in before the next school dance. One of the female teachers, a 35-year-old, told her that after spending the weekend going to different stores, there was not a single sleeved dress that either she or a 16-year-old would want to buy. Half the school would have been in detention if they hadn't taken out that rule. As a guy, I would have deeply considered purchasing and wearing a sleeveless dress to the dance, before chickening out and not going at all. The company I used to work at told us that our emails didn't work externally, and that we could only email each other. It was total rubbish and everyone knew it. We could email our friends and families at any time, but we had to pretend like nobody actually knew. That's 200 people in the office hiding a secret because the IT guys weren't actually IT guys and had no idea how to set up an internal messaging system. Oh, those IT guys knew. They also thought it was a dumb rule and just let email through rather than block it and have to listen to people complain. At a private school I went to, it was mandatory for all boys to wear ties on Wednesdays. If you didn't wear one, you were sent home to get one. Well, one day I forgot. Luckily, I was blessed with the ingenuity of MacGyver that day and made a tie out of a long piece of paper towel. It worked for a couple of hours until some absolute jerks in my class pointed it out. Apparently, paper is not an acceptable material for ties. I was sent home. I once worked at a Chinese restaurant where if you forgot to put the rice on the table's order, white or brown rice, which were free, the owner expected you to buy the entire table's meal out of your paycheck. It happened to me once in the 6 months I was there, and they told me to pay the $50 tab for the table. I told them that if they enforced that rule, I'd walk out in the middle of service. They didn't enforce the rule. In my elementary school, a few times a week, they'd take the brightest students and put them in a class 1 or 2 grade levels higher to help teach maturity. I was finished with my work. Grade 4, I was put into a grade 6 class, and I didn't have anything to do, so I started doing the other class work. After I finished, I went to the teacher and asked if I'd done it correctly and proceeded to be chastised for the next 30 minutes. Apparently, there's some taboo on challenging yourself. When I was in high school, there was a rule that students were not allowed to grow facial hair of any form. If a student tried to grow facial hair or just plain didn't have time to shave before getting to class, which started at 7 a.m., he was sent to the disciplinary office, scolded by the vice principal, and forced to shave with a single-bladed disposable razor and no shaving cream. Multiple of my friends faced this punishment. I asked several teachers why this rule was in effect, and most of them simply stated that they didn't know. I got one answer out of the dozen teachers I asked, and that was, "It's so that the students don't look like they're older and get mistaken for faculty. This would allow them to roam the halls and not get sent back to class." To which I could only respond with, "Why don't you just learn what your co-workers look like?" The football coach was not happy with me after that. Now, to be fair to the coach, I've also had jobs where I've hated everyone I've worked with, and didn't want to do anything more with any of them than was absolutely necessary. But in defense of the author, who's mistaking a teen for faculty? I was homeschooled through high school, and when I was applying to schools, I had this conversation with the local college's admission folks. They said, "Okay, and we'll need a copy of your high school transcript." I don't have one, I was homeschooled. "Okay, well, we'll still need a transcript." "Right, but I don't actually have one." "Well, we need a transcript to let you in, so you'll have to send us one. You do realize that no such thing actually exists, so I'm going to have to make something up." "That's fine." Not mine, but at my friend's work. Not allowed to download Firefox because it's not secure. The main browser was Internet Explorer 6. To show school support when the school song was played, students would link arms and sway side to side. We got a new principal who immediately banned swaying due to its, quote, suggestive nature. Any student caught swaying will be suspended. And we were. This was 1972. He was fired in 1973. In 2002, my oldest child had this weird substitute teacher in one of her high school classes. She commented about strange rules and his bad attitude. When she said his name, all I could do was laugh. It was my old principal. We weren't allowed to talk at lunch in the cafeteria, grades 6 through 8. Years 7 through 11 in the academy I go to, we have to wear these thick black blazers year-round, and you're not allowed to take them off for any reason except science experiments and art. In 2009, there was a mini heat wave when we still weren't allowed to take off our blazers. Many detentions were given that week for taking off the blazers so we wouldn't get too hot. Oh boy, I sympathize. My last job required me to wear slacks, a thick cotton dress shirt, company provided, and a tie. You had to wear this every shift, even if it was 100 degrees outside and you were unloading the truck. Even sweating your butt off in the heat wasn't nearly as bad as getting drenched unloading trucks in the rain. Uniforms are supposed to make everyone look neat and tidy. No one looks neat and tidy dripping wet from sweat or drenched in rain. People who swear by dress codes should be forced to sit in a sauna wearing all that heavy clothing. A friend of mine said he had to deal with crap like this until one day when a coworker keeled over from heat exhaustion and turned around and sued the place for endangering his life. After that, if the news said it was going to be really hot out, they could dress down for the day. Sad that it took that for them to change, though. No Linux in high school because it was classified as a hacking tool. I went to a Catholic school from 1st grade to 8th grade, so you can just imagine how many absolutely ridiculous rules we had to follow. But I think the worst was when we got a male principal and he made a rule that we were no longer allowed to wear shorts under our skirts. At the time, I was only upset about it because it made no sense to me, since no one could even see the shorts. But once I got older, I realized just how sick it was. You know, I think I'd have told my kids to wear the shorts, and to call me and tell me every time someone reported one of them for wearing the shorts. I was on vacation with my girlfriend at the time, and her dad had a no peeing standing up rule. Literally, I wasn't allowed to pee standing up in his house. He said this to me at the beginning of the vacation, and I thought he meant to make sure that the toilet seat was down after I used it, since he only had daughters and wanted to protect them or something. So one time when I was peeing standing up as any man would, my girlfriend's mum says from outside the door that she can hear someone peeing while standing up. Still taking this as a joke, I admitted that it was me. I then got a 30-minute lecture on how I should obey his rules and not do that. Still one of my biggest what the frick moments in a relationship. I was never given the true reason for this rule. He said something about protecting his daughters, maybe not wanting to hear a man peeing or something. I wasn't really paying attention during his lecture, so most of it went over my head. I listened to him lecture me because he was a military man, my girlfriend's parents, and already hated everything I did, and I didn't want to cause any more problems. Don't smoke green herb, the federal government. It's okay, you can smoke here, California. At my high school, when someone was late, they'd just have the teacher mark tardy on their computer. Most students were never more than a minute late. They just couldn't get to class fast enough and would walk in 30 seconds late or so. Our principal had the brilliant idea of instead having a tardy table all the way across the school where students would go, line up, and register as being tardy. If you were late at the class, the teacher would send you to the tardy table instead of just marking you late themselves. Instead of having a teacher mark the 1 or 2 people who showed up tardy to their class, you had late students from all classes lining up to register as tardy with only one person to process them at said table. The result was students ending up 15 to 30 minutes late to class because they were waiting in line to register. Parents weren't pleased, but the principal insisted that it would reduce the number of students who were late overall. I'm not sure if they kept it or not. The tardy table was started just a few months before I quit school. Public schools always have the dumbest rules though. If you make the shape of a pistol with your index finger and thumb, it's 0 tolerance. You bully the gay kid and it's meh, whatever. My high school's cafeteria was way too small to legally hold all of the students for fire code reasons. For this reason, I'd eat lunch in the band room. My senior year, they cracked down on this. The principal called an assembly and announced that all students would be required to spend the lunch period in the cafeteria. At this point, I stood up and said, "Do you realize that that would require exceeding the legal capacity of the cafeteria, breaking the law, and putting student safety at risk?" The principal responded with, "Well, sometimes you have to make do with what you have." What's life like as a teen parent? I'm 35 and have a 16 and 14-year-old. They're pretty good kids overall. I mean, they're rotten teenagers, but that's to be expected. It's pretty cool that I can still do stuff with them and not seem so out of place. We are, however, the youngest parents at our school, which is kind of odd for both us and the kids sometimes. So my mum had me when she was 18. I'm now 18 and she's 36. She looks like she hasn't aged in 10 years and everyone thinks we're sisters. My dad, on the other hand, looks like he could either be my dad or, when we go out drinking, possibly my sugar daddy. We go to bars sometimes and I never get carded. I find it very easy to empathize with the things my kid is going through because high school wasn't that long ago for me, and I can remember very clearly what it was like. Also, having seen me struggle through my 20s as a young mum has definitely set her on a different path. She's a women's shelter volunteer, an honor roll student, and has plans to go into law enforcement. My mum is 35 and I'm 19. She's definitely more in the know than my friends' parents when it comes to pop culture, and sometimes I feel like she's more wild than I am because she never had a chance to get it out of her system when she was my age. Based on what she's told me, having a child saved her future, and we're really close. Move ahead a generation. When I graduated high school, my parents were in their early to mid-30s. My dad was 16 when I was born. To me, a stupid 17-year-old, I thought my parents were old people. I was 34 when my first child was born. I can't wrap my head around that stuff. It's definitely fun to go somewhere with your kid once they've grown up and watch as our weird society thinks you're a couple. I know a very attractive young woman in her early 20s. I mean, she's so pretty that she turns heads wherever she goes. She's even done some modeling work. Anyway, she's told me that whenever she's out in public with her dad, they get dirty looks from middle-aged women who think that she's her dad's trophy girlfriend and not his daughter. The middle-aged men, on the other hand, will sometimes nod in approval and give him a thumbs up. And both points of that last commenter make me sad for 2 different reasons. Be less judgmental, middle-aged ladies, and be less gross, middle-aged men. Today is actually my daughter's 20th birthday. I'm 38. It's weird for people like us because we didn't have the same life most people did. Like, from the time I was 18 years old, I had the responsibility of someone else's life. Most of my friends were out partying and being selfish, in a good way, to clarify, and living their own life, and mine was focused on providing a good life for my daughter. I knew I didn't want any more kids, and now she's an adult, it's great. I got to experience the stuff that goes along with being a parent, but I'm 38 and the hard work is done. I have lots of friends just now starting to have kids. Screw that. As others noted, it was always weird being in between. Among my peers, I was always ahead, because I was already a parent going to softball games on Sunday morning instead of nursing a hangover. Okay, sometimes it was both. But all the other parents were way older than me. Walking into my first parent-teacher conferences, I felt like I was going to get into trouble. Also, it leads to some weird situations. I used to go geocaching with her on the weekends, and I can remember some old lady grilling me because I was a 24-year-old guy walking out into the woods with a 6-year-old girl. And of course nobody thinks, oh, you're her dad. I also had to bust up a house party that she threw in her mum's foreclosed house when she was about 17. I walked in and looked around for her, and nobody had the sense to realize that I was a parent. It wasn't until I started screaming, "Everyone, get the frick out of here before the cops get in," that they realized that I wasn't there to chill. Though I have to admit, I was pretty proud. They'd blacked out all the windows so no light was coming outside, and they had a full-on DJ with a sound stack. 17-year-old me would have loved that party. I married into a pre-made family that made me a grandfather at the age of 39. My wife's oldest child had a child as a teenager herself. By my mid-40s, I had 4 grandchildren. Personally, I didn't like being a parent, I didn't feel like I was good at it, and didn't find any satisfaction or enjoyment there. So the teen years were difficult. My 2 oldest had significant behavioral issues, and my oldest has spent years in prison a couple of times for different substance trafficking, and many more years in juvie for other crimes. Theft and malicious mischief kind of things. However, I love being a grandparent. It's been a complete paradigm shift for me. I don't really know why, but I enjoy spending time with my grandkids, and I offer to babysit fairly often. And I feel like I'm young enough now to really enjoy the kids without being the old man. I make enough money now to spoil them, have plenty of vacation time to go to the zoo or Disneyland or pretty much whatever I want. My relationship with my 2 younger kids has significantly improved, but the oldest is still in prison and completely unwilling to take responsibility for his actions and the danger that he presents to his children, so that relationship is still strained. I'm 37 with a 16 and 14-year-old and a 9-year-old too. It's awesome being my age with teenagers. I have tons of energy compared to some of my older counterparts. When I coach my kids' youth volleyball, basketball, or soccer teams, I can still get on the field and play with them. I absolutely love schooling teenagers. Teachers are usually friendlier to us because they see us as similarly aged. I feel for my friends that are now dealing with their ticking biological clock and fretting about marriage and babies. The biggest negative has been trying to find and develop worthwhile friendships. Most parents tend to create friendships of convenience that center around the age of their kids. Thus, we often feel left out because we're still pretty young and active, and we don't fit the mold of the typical parents of a 16-year-old. While we didn't initially plan to be parents as teenagers, I don't regret it at all. Also, I look forward to 7 years from now when my kids will be out of high school and we'll be 44-year-old empty nesters. A few years ago, when my great-grandmother was still alive, we were able to get a photo with 5 generations of women and baby women in it. Each had a kid before 18. It's pretty sweet, actually. My son is 14 and he's almost 3 inches taller than me now, and I'm the cool mum to all of his friends. He's a really good kid and involved in anything and everything he puts his mind to. I often feel like it's the payback for enduring the amount of crap society threw my way when I got pregnant with him in high school. Teachers wanting me to drop out, principal not wanting me to walk with my class, because apparently it would look bad for the morale. Screw your morale. I graduated high school and college with honors. My son knows my history and knows what he needs to keep it from repeating. He is, though, above all, my son. He knows that too. Yeah, man, frick the school system. When I was pregnant, I was trying to move my class schedule around and the guidance counselor said, well, it's not like you're going to graduate anyways. I graduated with the 2nd highest marks in my class. I am the teen baby. I can honestly say that my mum is the best woman I have ever or will ever meet. I'm 18 now and had a wonderful childhood. She worked her butt off for me and gave me everything I ever wanted. I know this didn't really answer the question, I just had to give a shout out to my mum. Honestly, so far the accounts have all been weighted a lot more towards the positive than the narrator was expecting. It's actually kind of inspiring that so many young parents seem to be able to come through for their kids in the face of societal expectations and support healthy, functional families. I'm sure that there are other cases too, just like older people with kids. We might hear from some more of the negative cases soon. Not yet 30, but my husband is. I'm 27. We had our first child when I was 16 and he was 18. He's 11 and has that preteen thing going on. We've been married 11 years and have a 10, 7, and 2-year-old as well. It's definitely weird sometimes because most of our friends are running around with 1 or maybe 2 toddlers, and our oldest daughter is already wearing a training bra. Some cool things, though, are that we're still young and still cool to her in some ways. We like video games and modern music. However, if I even remotely dance or hint at dancing, I get the, "Oh my god, Mom, you're so old, that's so embarrassing," thing. She occasionally tells us how old and decrepit we are, her words, not mine, but she also tells us how old her friends' parents are in ways like, "So-and-so's parents are so old, like 45, and old like Nana." I'm 59, my daughter is 42, and has a 21-year-old daughter who has a little boy who's 2, making me a great-grandmother for frick's sake. Unbelievable. This early motherhood string is unique in my family going back to the mid-18th century, so we're not living in a van down by the river or anything. I'm a professional person, as are both of my children. Having a child at 17 isn't optimal, but it worked out for me. I delayed going back to school till my children were in high school. That was my choice, and it won't be right for everyone. The very best thing about having children young is youth itself. Not only was I young enough to play and run and crawl around the floor, my son was born when I was 21, and wake up the next day to do it again all over, I was 37 when I became a grandmother. I was young enough then to have more fun with my grandchildren than many people are, and I took full advantage of the opportunity. This new one, the 2-year-old, pushes my endurance envelope in ways the previous 2 generations didn't. Would I change any of it if I could go back to when I was 16 and not pregnant? Not if it meant missing having these specific people in my life. It's tough though. It's not all Sesame Street and applesauce, but the good parts are breathtaking. I've lived to love 7 descendants, and each one is unique and irreplaceable. Sometimes I forget how full and crazy and happy and loud and joyous my life has been so far until I explain it to someone else, so thanks for listening. I am the product of a teenage mum. I could have gone the same way since it seemed to be a pattern on my mum's side, but given my upbringing, I knew what I didn't want. My mum and stepdad and that whole situation pretty much showed me what not to do, as it did with at least one of my 2 sisters. The jury is still out on the littlest sister. So far so good though. That said, I was still young when I had my oldest. I was almost 23. I'd married my high school sweetheart and we just felt that kids were naturally the next step. I don't really mind that I have kids a bit older than my friends' kids. My oldest will be 13 this year, and it's killing me a little each day that goes by closer to his birthday. I'll turn 36 shortly after. I'm happy for him to be more and more independent, but I'm still saddened that he'll officially be a teenager this year. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was 19, my wife was 18. Kids are now 25 and 21. My son just graduated Navy Nuclear Power School, regarded as one of the most difficult curriculums in the world, and my daughter is married and not having kids. So, sitting at 44 and 42, we're empty nesters, less of our 2 crazy Frenchies. Life is good, man. I've known someone like this, and one of their friends tried for a mother-daughter ménage à trois. It didn't work. While I'm sure this scenario is in plenty of adult videos, I highly doubt the actors are actually mother and daughter. So it sounds like your friend is just kind of a prevert. I got pregnant at 19 and gave birth 2 months after I turned 20. I'm 29 with a 9-year-old now. I'm the youngest mum at my kiddo's school, but it's only because it's at a beach city and it's quite pricey to live here. I'm sure if I went inland, I would meet younger parents. It's pretty awesome that when I'm 38 I'll be done raising kids, provided I don't have any more. It's nice to have a 9-year-old because I wake up most mornings with a cup of coffee that she brewed and put honey and milk in for me. We get our nails done together and she's like a little best friend. She's ridiculously well behaved and I'm just so happy that I refused to have an operation to get rid of her like at least 5 people suggested and 2 offered to pay for. Her dad owes just under 60 grand in support. He was 19 too, and he handled it badly. Anyway, it's awesome having a preteen at 29 because she's like my little buddy and she lights up my life. Not quite teens, but I took my sons, who were aged 20 and 24 at the time, on my stag do to Amsterdam where I was 41. My ex had my eldest when I was just 17. It was a group of 20 of us, including my sons, and was so much fun and totally hilarious. I will say that I thought my kids would have seen that it's not easy having kids early, and I was always open and honest to them about the things that you give up having children whilst being young yourself. My oldest son took this on board, and he's waited to start his family. But sadly, last year my 16-year-old son had a child with a girl he's no longer with. We're totally supportive, but I can't help but feeling a little sad that he's sacrificed his own childhood. And it may be more difficult today, given that you need approximately 4 degrees to get any job that can support a family. But then again, maybe just like some of these stories are stories of unexpected triumph against societal expectations, maybe the Zoomers could surprise us. I wish them all the best, I really do. When I was 19, I had my son. You think you'd be generationally closer to them? There's a chasm between a 14-year-old and a 33-year-old today. I feel it's wider than between 14-year-old me and 33-year-old me, mostly due to technology. The years have not been kind, but it's sort of a blessing that I can pass as early 40s. I don't get as much stigma as I used to when he was younger from teachers and scout leaders. I also have 2 small kids. I love them dearly, but I'll be the parent of an under 18-year-old for almost 30 years. I had my son when I was 15. He's 14 now and I'm 29. Everyone thinks we're siblings. I look younger than my age and most people think I'm between 21 and 25, so that doesn't help either. Most of his friends' parents are well into their 50s, so I don't exactly hang out with them or know them very well. I've had people question whether I'm his parent or not, mainly because I'm younger. We'll probably get confused for girlfriend and boyfriend when he's in his 20s. Both my kiddos were accidents. I love my sons nonetheless, but turning 30 this year, and if my kiddos move out when they're 18 to 20 years old, being early to mid-40s will be glorious. Do people really think that their kids will move out at 18? I'm 26 and at least half of my friends my age still live with their parents, because rent and housing prices are ridiculous. I mean, I'm a very independent person, so my parents are kind of free to do whatever they want, but I often wonder if people expecting their kids to move out at 18 and never come back are a little bit naive. Housing and student loans are not decreasing in price. Stepdad here, but my wife had her first of 2 children at 19 and is a few years older than me, so now I'm a 30-year-old with a 14-year-old boy. For some context, I've been living with them for 5 years and I've been around them most of the time for 6. It's wild. Sometimes I kick butt as a dad and sometimes I feel like I blow it. That's probably par for the course for parenting. For what it's worth, I don't have a lot in common with my teenage son, but a little more with my stepdaughter who's a couple of years younger. It probably helps that I've been around for half her life as well. Not that my relationship with my son is bad, but we have to compromise to hang out. I've never been a video game person, so we'll do something like play Halo together, because he likes it and I'll struggle to play, and he'll struggle with me sucking up the mission so much. I'm also not sure that at 30 I'm ready to be challenged by a teenager in the way they typically challenge you. So I try my best to be real and honest and just listen. Also, I look young as it is, so it is hard forming a relationship with the other parents. Usually I get pegged as a much older sibling. Sometimes I feel like I lost the last half of my 20s. I'd like to have traveled more, had more time to pursue hobbies, and enjoy my money when I started earning it. It feels like half of my money goes to groceries because of my teenage son. While I can provide a middle-class life for my kids at this age, my biggest regret is that I'm probably not going to be equipped to help with college a whole lot, if at all. I still won't have reached my peak earning potential. On the flip side, they'll be adults earning for themselves by the time I'm 40. I'm really excited to relax and do adult things with my kids. They're good kids, and I think and hope they'll be good adults with solid values. I think it'll be a lot of fun to do silly things and throw down a few beers. I have to be so serious with them sometimes. Meanwhile, I'm less than 10 years out of college and I did some funny stuff in my 20s. They think I'm old and they don't even know. Finally, a topic that I'm qualified to comment on. I had my daughter when I was 17 and she was always proud that people mistook me for an older sister. She wasn't a rotten teen and I'm not sure why. I certainly made enough mistakes parenting her. She's 28 now and we're very close. I'm 32 with 14-year-old twins. It's weird. People who meet me at work or other places away from my kids assume that when I talk about my kids, I mean young kids, like under 10. The first time a new coworker heard my son on the phone, she genuinely thought it was a man calling me and that I was just messing with her, saying that it was my teenage son. I'm also told I look about 25 to 27 rather than 32, so that adds to it. At school or sport functions, people sometimes think I'm the aunt or the older sister rather than the mum. Sometimes meeting another parent, I can definitely see that they're trying to figure out how old I am. Did I have them as a teenager, or do I just look really good for my age? And how old I must have been when they were born. It's a little awkward making small talk with people who are 10 to 20 years older than me all the time, but sometimes it does work. One of my best parent friends is a woman in her late 60s raising her grandson. My kids, especially my 11-year-old daughter, are a little self-conscious about my age. My twins are boys, and I know they'd sooner die rather than tell me this, but I think there's been a few "the twins' mum is hot" kind of things at school for them. I also took all of my kids into a coffee place. I normally stop into this place alone on my way to work, and the barista made a big fuss over not thinking I was old enough for these to be my kids, and my 11-year-old just about died of embarrassment. I got pregnant with my oldest at 17 and gave birth to her at 18. I had my second kid at 23 and my youngest at 25. I'm 40 now, so the kids are 22, 17, and 15. I love being a young mother. I had energy and enthusiasm. I wasn't nearly as cynical, and I had more patience. When I was in my 30s, I had a teenager, a preteen, and one just a bit younger. My friends and neighbors were just starting their families and were dealing with sleepless nights, spit up, and child-proofing the whole block. I was happy to be past all of that mess. I'm 32 and my wife is 36. We have a 16-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a newborn. I'll be honest, having a new baby at this age is exhausting. Yeah, it was scary the first time around, but we had the energy to cope back then. It does help though that they're all great kids. I have to work pretty hard, anywhere up to 90 hours a week, to keep up with the bills, but it allows my wife to stay at home, so the kids have always got one parent around at all times. My father died when I was 7, so hopefully I'll have more years with my kids than I did with my own dad. If I could give any new parents one piece of advice, buy a dining table. It's probably the most important thing in our house. Being able to sit down and eat together as a family is what keeps us all sane. Story from the other side, I'm 16 and my mum is 31. Her family completely wrote her off and didn't talk to her for years. My dad is 32, and his family was super psyched about having a baby. We lived with his parents until about 5 years ago when my dad finally got his degree. I actually like having these young parents because they have tons of energy to do things with me that I've never seen any of my friends' parents doing. My wife and I are in our mid-30s and we have 3 teenagers, 17, 14, and 14. Not twins, just different marriages. Our oldest graduates this year and I'm excited for her to become an adult and start college. In 4 more years, my kids will all be in college and we'll be empty nesters. I'll be 40 and for some reason that makes me feel awesome because we'll have a long time to enjoy our middle years without kids. Obviously, we'll always be there for our kids as they go through adulthood, but now we can go travel and not have to worry about what we're going to do with all these kids. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.